Chapter 1244. No matter how useless Chu Feng was, she was still one of the leaders of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Why was Han Fei pointing at him like this? Not to mention that she didn't know there was such a person in her camp. Even if she knew, she wouldn't tell you in front of so many people. A fishbone spear appeared in Chu Feng's hand and she also pointed at Han Fei. Fish Dragon King, do you really think you're invincible? Han Fei smiled contemptuously. Why? Are you doubting this Dragon King's ability? Come, this Dragon King will give you a handicap of both legs. If you move a single step, it's my loss. Let's see what level the prodigies of your Blood Sea Divine Wood City are at. Buzz. Yeah. Immediately, the crowd of blood demons burst into an uproar. Someone said coquettishly, "How arrogant! Why would they need Chu Feng? I'll help you." A blood demon leaped out, roared, and the branches of the sea willows behind him waved their fangs and claws at Han Fei like 3,000 white hairs. The blood demon's goal was simple. Didn't Han Fei boast that he would lose if he moved one step? She didn't believe that Han Fei could suppress all the heavenly talents here with just one hand. Thousands of pairs of eyes immediately stared at Han Fei. Regardless of whether it was the Baibei Royal City or the Shuemu Sky, they had never seen the Fish Dragon King get serious. At this moment, of course, he was curious. All the sea demons widened their eyes. They wanted to see just how strong the so-called prodigies on the prodigy roll of the royal city were. An insect buzzed. This is a bit difficult. A big bird stood on the back of the insect. What do you mean by a little difficult? If he didn't move, he wouldn't have any leverage. He was still standing in midair, not standing on the seawater. He wanted to kill a peak sea spirit with just a horizontal strike? How could an ordinary person do that? On the human side, many people's eyes flickered. If the heavenly talents of the Baibei Royal City are so strong, how many people in the Shuemu heaven can compare to them? Only Xu Xiaoman's eyes were shining. If she hadn't seen Han Fei fight, she wouldn't have cared. When Han Fei was a peak-level law enforcer, he had already defeated 100 enemies by himself. Surpassing realms to fight was like a game to him. Han Fei had already become an explorer. How could he be defeated? Han Fei held the spear with one hand and pressed the end of the spear with his palm. For a moment, the spear was shrouded in red demonic energy, and he pointed it forward casually. Everything seemed normal. Many people did not discover anything from this spear. They only heard Chu Feng shout. Dodge, however, Chu Feng was still too slow. She thought that since everyone knew that Han Fei was good at the proximity technique, they would be wary of him. However, at that moment she seemed to have realized that something was wrong. What exactly was wrong? She didn't see it clearly, but it was definitely not right. When Chu Feng shouted, the corners of Han Fei's mouth were still curled. Although the principles of the short-distance technique and the instant technique were different, the effects they produced were extremely similar. The close-distance technique shortened the distance, while the moment technique froze time for a split second. After the spear light pierced through the air, the spearhead came out from the other side. Wasn't that the close-distance technique? Generally speaking, under the premise that time was not affected, as long as one was fast enough, one could still dodge it. However, if time was frozen, there was no such thing as dodging, because there was no way to dodge it at all. This was also why Zhang Xuanyu's overall strength was the weakest in the Thug Academy, but he was probably second only to Han Fei in one-on-one combat. This was a combat skill that this guy comprehended on his own, which was extremely powerful. As long as he seized the opportunity, there was no way to dodge it. Puff, without any suspense, Han Fei's spear pierced through the blood demon's chest. Rich demonic energy was injected in an instant. With a bang, the blood demon exploded. This person had been dead for several seconds before a willow branch reached Han Fei. However, Han Fei put one hand on his waist and put away the spear with the other, as if he didn't see these willow branches at all. When these willow branches reached Han Fei, they began to wither and wither, not even reaching the corner of Han Fei's clothes. At this moment the audience was silent. Han Fei's spear was too casual. It was just a light shot, but the moment it was shot out, it was so fast that they couldn't see it at all. Therefore, everyone thought that they had recognized the power of the close-distance technique. This kind of combat method that ignored spatial distance was really terrifying. A sea demon exclaimed secretly, "So strong, isn't he too strong?" A sea demon swallowed. Is this 10th on the heavenly talent list in the royal city? On the Shuemu heavenly side, a human exclaimed, "This speed is even faster than shadowless arrow stream." Someone said solemnly, "No, it's even faster than arrow flash." An insectoid stroked its large horn with its long whiskers. "Can I block that attack?" A big bird was speechless. "Who gave you the confidence?" Clang. Han Fei flicked the spear shaft lightly, making a crisp sound of metal colliding. Han Fei stared at Chu Feng, his eyes unfocused. "Me? You're not even qualified to block my spear. Is everyone in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City this kind of trash?" Chu Feng's face turned green. Of course, she had her own trump cards. But why did she fight the Fish Dragon King? Someone had reminded her on the way here. This time, there were 3 strongest people in the Baibei Royal City. The first was the Fish Dragon King. The second was Yu Hong and Shui Hongyan. At this moment, the other 2 hadn't appeared, but the strongest Fish Dragon King had appeared. No one would be willing to fight with him. However, Chu Feng thought for a moment, I have so many people on my side. I'm not afraid that the Fish Dragon King will attack me. Otherwise, the Fish Dragon King will definitely benefit from the fight between the Sandpiper and the Clam. This Fish Dragon King was not stupid. Since it couldn't fight a group battle, it would be a one-on-one battle. Judging from the Fish Dragon King's performance just now, Chu Feng certainly wouldn't go out to fight it alone. If she won, she would certainly become famous, and this matter would definitely spread throughout the Blood Sea Divine Wood. However, if she lost, she might even lose her life. Chu Feng immediately glanced at the Shuemu heavenly side and shouted, "Shuemu heavenly, your Shuemu heavenly side has the most people here. Why don't we join hands and kill the sea demons in the Baibei Royal City?" Han Fei grinned and immediately said to Young Man telepathically, "I agree," but Young Man stepped out and said coldly, "Okay, except for the Fish Dragon King, all the sea demons belong to us. The Fish Dragon King belongs to you." Immediately, all the sea demons changed their expressions. A sea demon scolded Chu Feng angrily, "Demon, we are all sea demons anyway. If you do this, the 2 royal cities will fight to the death in the future." Chu Feng smiled contemptuously and said, "Who do you think you are? How can you decide the affairs of the strong? It's not up to you to decide whether the royal cities will fight or not." Chu Feng shouted in a low voice, "Sisters, everyone's target is the Fish Dragon King." Han Fei pretended to be gloomy, then pointed at Young Man and said, "Good, good, Shuemu Heavenly. I'll remember you. What's your name? The Shuemu Heavenly is not bad to have someone like you." Young Man said, "Likewise. You are not weak either. You can be called a heavenly talent. As for me, I'm Shu Xiaoman of the human race's Flying Feather Tribe." Han Fei grinned hideously. "Okay. Young Man, I'll remember you. In the future, I'll definitely fight with you for 3,000 rounds." Then, Han Fei glanced at the sea demons and shouted in a low voice, "The people of the Baibei Royal City would rather die than kneel. If they want to fight, then let's fight. Let's see what happens." Oh! Han Fei held the spear and the spear light bloomed. If more people are useful, why do we still need to cultivate? You will eventually discover how powerful this Dragon King is. Watch this Dragon King defeat all of you alone. Han Fei was very happy to see this battle. Chu Feng knew that this choice was actually more disadvantageous to her. However, at this moment, her life was at stake. She couldn't really go up and fight the lunatic Fish Dragon King, could she? Besides, the reason why Chu Feng chose to fight was that she had the confidence to do so. As soon as Han Fei rushed out, the battle broke out in an instant. Young man shouted coldly, "Kill!" Buzzing, chirp chirp, what could those sea demons do? At this time, they could only fight. Fortunately, they also had more than 300 people. Although the number of people was less than half that of Shui Mu Tian's side, it was not impossible for them to fight. However, no one chose to fight young man at all. After all, even the Fish Dragon King was quite appreciative of this person. When they entered the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, many people had seen the scene of young man pointing her fingers and the sea demons exploding. It was very terrifying, and young man stood on a bug and didn't make a move. She just watched all this quietly and said lightly, "More than 600 people against 300 people. If I lose, I won't have the face to tell others." As for Han Fei, he was trapped in countless rune spells, and those blood demons surrounded Han Fei in circles. All the blood demons squeaked. Chu Feng's voice sounded like a ghost in the thousands of rolling spells. "Fish Dragon King, aren't you curious about what will happen if you use the strength of the Tao-seeking state in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm? Today you are courting death. Don't blame others." Just now, the space collapsed, and Han Fei was directly wrapped by the endless spell. At this moment, he glanced at the runes around him, only to see that the runes were moving like swords and attacking. After a while, these runes began to evolve and gradually formed a huge fish. In Han Fei's eyes, information appeared. Name: Cursed Demonic Fish. Introduction: an evil spell written with life. It's an evil creature summoned by all creatures with blood as a sacrifice. It has the ability to copy the opponent's strength. This creature will absorb the opponent's blood, soul, vitality, and strength through the power of the curse to strengthen itself. When all the opponent's strength is swallowed, the cursed demonic fish will become the opponent and become an emotionless puppet creature. Level: none. Quality: none. Realm: none. Combat skill: strength. Copy: absorbable. Remarks: don't fight a protracted battle. Chapter 1245. Huh! Before Han Fei fought, the old turtle suddenly said, "It's really an evil technique." This was a cursed demon fish. Someone had once captured a king and used the cursed demon fish to forcefully absorb it, forcibly sucking that king to death. Even his great Tao was sucked away. In the end, this cursed fish turned into a king puppet. Han Fei's face changed. "So strong," the old turtle said. "It's a pity that this cursed demonic fish was used to deal with you. It seems that. Why don't you try sucking it back?" "Han Fei," the old turtle said, "cursed demonic fish are just unconscious evil creatures. They fight according to some kind of will. But you are different. You can steal lives at any time. In this way, you are actually more evil than it." Han Fei. Although the old turtle's words were not pleasant to hear, this cursed demonic fish was a bit similar to his void line's ability. However, it had the ability to absorb blood, soul, and power. Among them, the void lines could also seize souls, but it had to be done after the other party had died. Only then could he use the void lines to absorb some of the souls back. At this point, just absorbing the soul power of some living creatures was no longer enough for him to grow. Of course, when the number reached a certain level, it would be another situation. For example, in the battle outside the Divine Child Peak just now. Han Fei had absorbed a lot of souls, but he couldn't absorb any more. This cursed demonic fish was huge, more than 300 meters long, and it was definitely a super sea monster. As a matter of fact, when the cursed demonic fish opened its mouth, endless black mist shrouded the entire space. Han Fei glanced around and saw that those weird characters were emitting bursts of red light. Han Fei tried to rush up and hit it more than 200 times with the Monkey King 3000 strikes to see the effect. In the outside world, above a huge rune ball, there was a series of thumping sounds. A large number of curse runes were smashed by Han Fei's terrifying power. Chu Feng shouted, "Fuse with your associate spirits. This person must be killed. Otherwise, we can't show the power of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City." The women in red, who were originally in human form, had all turned into millennium snappers at this moment. Runes shot out from their mouth. Wherever it was broken, these bright red runes would mend it. Inside the array, Han Fei had been wrapped in a large black fog. Because of the enormous suction force, Han Fei could clearly feel that his vitality was slowly draining away. He stepped on the coiled turtle array and the soul-driving array. Both arrays were activated at the same time. At the same time, all the void lines erupted and hooked onto the huge fish. After that, Han Fei felt that he was under an enormous and terrifying pressure on his soul. Han Fei was surprised. This fish's soul is so strong. I feel that it's even stronger than mine. The old turtle said, "No, the soul power of this cursed fiend fish is equal to your own soul power. It is summoned according to you. Therefore, its power and the strength of its soul are completely based on you." Han Fei gnashed his teeth. "Why do I feel like you're gloating?" The old turtle cackled and said, "That Yu Wendao is about to be devoured by me. He pursues the Great Way too much. I'm simulating a Great Way for him. Haha, he thinks he has created a new Great Way. Haha." Hearing that the old turtle was still thinking about the fish Wendao at this critical moment, Han Fei immediately ignored him. Han Fei made up his mind and fully activated the sky-stealing technique. "You devour my vitality, and I devour yours. Let's see who can steal more." Although this cursed fiend fish was the same as Han Fei in terms of power. However, don't forget that Han Fei was simulating a peak-level sea spirit with the art of deception. Therefore, the cursed fiend fish was also at this level. Of course, the soul and power were essentially the same. It was just the difference in realm. In addition, there was an essential difference. The cursed fiend fish was a summoned creature. Such an impressive creature was not something that could appear just because one wanted to. She also contained a powerful life force. However, this vitality was provided by the more than 300 blood demons. Because of the gap in realm, Han Fei suddenly felt that his vitality seemed to be slowly increasing. This speed was not very fast, but it was definitely increasing. In the outside world, Chu Feng and the others looked at the rune array and gradually there was no movement. They couldn't help but show great joy on their faces. Chu Feng let out a long sigh of relief and sneered. "Arrogant guy, our blood sea divine wood city occupies a place with rune spells. How can you understand that?" In the mysterious space that seemed to be wrapped by billions of runes, a huge fish head slowly poked out. As soon as this fish came out, those runes were all introduced to the big fish. When the cursed fiend fish appeared completely, its body size was only more than 200 meters long, which surprised Chu Feng a little. "Is this fish dragon king so powerful?" The cursed fiend fish summoned with him, as the foundation was more than 200 meters long, which could only show that Han Fei was indeed very strong. After all, the summoned cursed fiend fish was as strong as the enemy in terms of strength. Therefore, the cursed fiend fish was so huge that Chu Feng was dumbfounded. However, Chu Feng didn't know that Han Fei had forcibly reduced the size of the cursed fiend fish by 100 meters. At this moment, a large group of Millennium Snappers suddenly felt weak. Including Chu Feng, they all felt weak. Chu Feng said, "Don't panic. When the Fish Dragon King completely dies, it will be a great contribution. 100 years of vitality is nothing." Shu Xiaoman, who hadn't fought yet, frowned and sensed the battle between Han Fei and the blood demon 100 kilometers away. From the moment Han Fei disappeared, her attention had never left him. Although she wanted to help, the Jing messenger had told her not to take the initiative before she came. That fish looked extraordinary at first glance. The scales on its body weren't scales at all, but strange runes of all shapes and sizes. However, after 100 breaths, just as Chu Feng thought that his side was about to win, he suddenly felt a portion of the vitality in his body being forcefully extracted. It transformed into a sea of incantations that flew out and imprinted on the body of the cursed demon fish. Immediately, a blood demon said anxiously, "Not good. I've lost 300 years of vitality. Why is the fish dragon king still alive?" Someone shouted, "The cursed fiend fish is indeed shrinking. When it grows to the size of the fish dragon king, it means that the puppet has been refined successfully. Fine, we'll lose another 100 years of vitality." However, after 100 seconds, the cursed fiend fish shrank to within 100 meters. Everyone's life force and lifespan were once again forcibly sucked away. At this moment, someone finally realized that something was wrong. Chu Feng looked awful. Why is the fish dragon king still alive? The cursed fiend fish is shrinking too slowly. Where did the jade dragon king get so much vitality for the cursed fiend fish to devour? Could it be that the fish dragon king was carrying a large number of spiritual fruits or life force tonics? After the fifth vitality absorption, when almost everyone contributed more than 500 years of vitality on average, someone shouted, "No, something must be wrong with the cursed fiend fish. Why is it still more than 50 meters long?" Someone wanted to stop, but seeing that the cursed fiend fish was reduced from more than 200 meters to only 50 meters, it meant that the fish dragon king was about to be swallowed and become the puppet fish dragon king. Someone shouted in a low voice, "Sisters, we've come to this point." The reason why the cursed demonic fish was so slow was because the ichthyosaur king was too powerful and he had too many treasures with him. However, the stronger the fish dragon king is, the more benefits we can get from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Let's work harder. Once, twice, 3 times. Han Fei felt that the cursed fiend fish had been sucked dry by him. The vitality of the cursed fiend fish was beyond his imagination. Han Fei felt that he had returned to his prime. At this moment, his lifespan should have reached 2,000 years again. Maybe even exceeded it. Today, he used the Apocalypse Divine technique twice. Who would have thought that he would be able to make up for that terrifying consumption in just one day? Because of the great loss of vitality, most of the Millennium Snappers in the outside world still looked beautiful on the surface. However, if one were to take a closer look, they would discover that the Millennium Snappers were emitting a deathly aura. Since the beginning, more than 30 people had died because of the lack of vitality. Once this great technique was activated, they couldn't let it go at all. Gotcha! When the cursed fiend fish cracked, everyone saw the fish dragon king standing motionlessly in the sea. Immediately, someone breathed a sigh of relief. In any case, it's already very commendable to kill the 10th strongest on the heavenly talent list of the Baibei Royal City. However, just when these Millennium Snappers were relieved and began to chuckle, they suddenly heard an arrogant and moldy voice. Is this all the so-called strong master of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City can do? After such a long time, you only got a lousy fish? Trying to devour my vitality and power? I, the Dragon King, have the bloodline of the Dragon King. How can your little tricks affect me? How is it possible? How can he be fine? No, if the fish Dragon King is fine, why did the cursed fiend fish become smaller? Puff! Someone was still talking, when he suddenly found that there was one more person next to him. Who else could it be but the fish Dragon King? Bam! 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 Han Fei performed the Monkey King 3,000 strikes again. Anyway, what did these blood demons know? Except for the Fish Dragon King's law enforcement distance, how could they know what other combat techniques the Fish Dragon King had? Besides, for a guy as irascible as the Fish Dragon King, the Monkey King 3,000 strikes was perfect for him. Who said that a spear could only stab people? It was equally effective for whipping and smashing people. Many of the blood demons who had just been fed with most of their vitality were still in the state of Millennium Snappers. In desperation, they tried to control Han Fei with melody. However, for Han Fei, their soul power was too weak to pull him into an illusion. Almost in the blink of an eye, more than 30 people were smashed by Han Fei. Han Fei smiled coldly. Today you will all die. Chapter 1246. The blood demons would never have thought that Han Fei could even resist such a curse. Moreover, he didn't seem to be injured at all. They couldn't understand it at all. It was impossible. In reality, it was not that Chu Feng's method of commanding the battle was wrong. If it had been the real Ichthyosaur King, he might have been able to avoid it unless he didn't engage in close combat from the start. Otherwise, as long as he entered this great incantation technique, wanting to forcefully break it, it was impossible. Even with Han Fei's strength, he couldn't directly break this array with the Monkey King 3000 strike. Of course, Han Fei didn't try his best. Shu Xiaoman breathed a sigh of relief when she saw all this from afar. She couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. Why did she have to worry about Han Fei? How could something happen to this guy who was so abnormal that it made one's scalp go numb? At this moment, Han Fei was killing everyone. However, in his perception, there seemed to be a black tide appearing on the surface of the sea more than 1,000 miles away. In front of the tide, the Millennium Snappers and sea demons were running wildly. Of course, there were also beings from the waterwood heaven. The water deity's voice echoed in Han Fei's head, "Okay, although I don't know what your plan is, I'm not afraid of you. However, your goal should be almost there. If you continue killing, the number of people in your camp will be more than the other two camps combined." 1,000 miles away. Yang Ruoyun, Yu Kailing, and the others all turned pale. So many undead creatures. In their perception, a huge black wave appeared. It was not a tide, but the undead insects and undead birds crawling on the surface of the sea. On the surface of the sea, there was a large amount of black seaweed spreading. They saw a half-mermaid entangled by a vine with their own eyes. In the blink of an eye, thousands of black thorns stabbed at him, followed by a large amount of seaweed that wrapped him up. Seaweeds and insects crawled along the way. That person was immediately engulfed by the black tide. In just a few breaths, he had turned into a pile of white bones that sank to the bottom of the sea. Who wouldn't be terrified at the sight of this? Even those insect race beings from the Shui Mu heaven were a little taken aback. Of course, the Zergs were a race with bigger ambitions. In their minds, defeating and eating their opponents was a very normal thing. There was nothing wrong with it. Since the undead bug tribe of the Thousand Mountains ancient realm would not attack live bugs like them, there were close to 100 Waterwood Sky bug tribe members charging at the front of the black tide while letting out a series of buzzing noises. Eat and wear the White Shell Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Charge! Our insect race is the strongest. Our army is in the millions. When the Zergs clamored and rushed to the entrance, Han Fei smashed one of them with a flip of his hand. He crushed a blood demon's protective blade wheel with one hand and suddenly retreated. Han Fei said telepathically, "Shu Xiaoman, take them away." Shu Young Man was shocked. In the battlefield between Shui Mutian and the sea demons, Shu Xiaoman suddenly stepped out and shouted, "Everyone, after 10 breaths, break out of the ancient realm." Someone was surprised. "Why? Young man, we have won a great victory this time, we should follow up with another attack." Shu Xiaoman said, "Let's go. Don't ask so many questions." Shu Xiaoman knew that in Han Fei's eyes, the life and death of these sea spirit state creatures were not important at all. Whether they were alive or dead, it didn't matter, because none of these people was a match for him. Besides, she had seen Han Fei fight 100 people alone. If Han Fei really wanted to attack, he wouldn't have killed 40 or 50 people in such a short time. At least half of them would have died here. It was obvious that Han Fei was planning something. His vision was limited, so he could only cooperate with him. Swish, swish, swish. Chu Feng and the others were going to fight again, but Han Fei suddenly stopped, which made many people confused. Then they perceived that many of their clansmen had appeared. In midair, streaks of red shadows dashed towards them at high speed. And Chu Feng knew one of them. Wasn't that Yang Ruoyun? Chu Feng shouted in a low voice, "Yang Ruoyun, how dare you show up?" Someone roared, "It's Yang Ruoyun." How dare she show up? However, Yang Royan responded, "Run, the undead bug tide is coming. I'll explain everything to you when we get out." Chu Feng and the others all changed their expressions. What the hell? A bug tide? This was only the first day they entered the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. Even if there was a bug tide, why were they so panicked? However, Chu Feng was shocked. Why did the Fish Dragon King stop? Chu Feng looked at the Shuemu heaven again, only to see Shu Xiaoman leading countless people closer and closer to the exit. Suddenly, Shu Xiaoman shouted, "Everyone, leave the ancient realm." Swish, swish, swish. Although many people of the Shuemu heaven were unwilling, and even the big birds and insects were complaining, no one refuted Shu Xiaoman's words. Because before they came, Shu Xiaoman had been designated as one of the leaders of the ancient realm this time. It was not because Shu Xiaoman was strong, but mainly to cooperate with Han Fei. At the moment when Shu Xiaoman shouted to leave the ancient realm, Han Fei shouted, "Everyone, leave the ancient realm." Someone was shocked. What happened? Why did they leave the ancient realm? Chu Feng received Yang Royan's message and immediately shouted, "Everyone, fight for the exit." Then Chu Feng looked at Han Fei. "Fish Dragon King, you and I should work together. Otherwise, the Shuemu heaven will block the exit, and we will be the ones to suffer in the end." Right at this moment, Han Fei glanced into the distance with obvious surprise. You're not dead?" The newcomers were naturally Yu Kailing and Lan Shuer. Although Han Fei had long known that they were peeping at him from a distance, he still had to show his surprise. Yu Kailing called out, "Master Dragon King." Lan Shuer gritted her teeth. She hated the Fish Dragon King to the core. However, because of their different identities, she had no choice but to grit her teeth and call out, "Master Dragon King." Lan Shuer no longer had the feeling of relying on a big shot. In the Fish Dragon King's eyes, she was even less than a chess piece. Sure enough, Sister Kailing was right. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. With the Fish Dragon King's arrogance, he certainly wouldn't humble himself and apologize to Lan Shuer. Han Fei grunted softly and said casually, "Go get the exit." After that, Han Fei turned his head, looked at Chu Feng who was rushing to the entrance, and then looked at Yang Royan. When Yang Royan saw Han Fei looking at her, her heart tightened. This person, although he looked fierce and silly on the surface, he was actually very cunning. However, after working with Han Fei for a short time, Yang Royan's view of Han Fei had completely changed. She just felt that this person didn't act according to common sense. She didn't know what his purpose was at all. His mind was unfathomable. Even if he used flowery words, it would be difficult to move him. Han Fei glanced at her with a faint smile and said without disguise, "Aren't you the traitor who just cooperated with me to kill the Blood Demon? Ha ha ha, you're quite pretty. If you can't stay in the Blood Sea Divinewood City, you can consider following me." Han Fei's words were directly imprinted in the hearts of many people. On the Sea Demon's side, many people heard it. Many people were surprised. The Fish Dragon King actually used the Blood Demon? Lan Shuer's face darkened. Sure enough, no man is good. Han Fei openly said that he cooperated with Yang Royan. The latter was about to refute, but then she thought it was wrong. She thought that Han Fei said this to prove that he was innocent and afraid that she would use this to frame him. However, because Han Fei expressed it so straightforwardly, it showed that Han Fei didn't care about her life or death at all and was only using her. Immediately, Yang Royan shouted coldly, "Fish Dragon King, I will avenge you someday." Han Fei grinned. "Clownfish, you want to take revenge on me? Who do you think you are?" At this time, when the tide of immortal insects was less than 800 kilometers away, some fast immortal birds had already rushed over. At this time, a large number of sea demons and blood demons who went to look for opportunities alone also rushed over. A sea demon shouted, "Master Dragon King, go quickly. The tide of immortal insects is coming." A blood demon squeaked, "Come on, fight for the entrance." When a large number of sea demons and blood demons began to gather at the entrance, Han Fei saw that the sea demons hadn't broken through the defense line of the waterwood heaven, and there were still blood demons attacking from behind, so he immediately shouted, "Can't you even fight for an entrance? Get out of the way and let me do it." Shu Xiaoman had been waiting for Han Fei to come, but Han Fei had been dawdling, standing there bragging or teasing some blood demons. It was not until the rest of the sea demons and blood demons had basically gathered and a large number of immortal birds had rushed over that he said he would fight for the entrance. Young Shu Man had already been ready. She shouted, "No more fighting! Everyone, don't guard. Open the entrance and let them fight for it themselves." Han Fei scolded, "Humph, timid as a crab. Everyone, guard the entrance and block the exit for me." However, when Han Fei rushed to the exit with the sea demons, half of the sea demons had already run away after the creatures of the waterwood heaven. Yu Kailing said to her via voice transmission, "Swear, if you have a chance, just run away. The Fish Dragon King is too conceited. He will only send us to our death." Lan Shuer nodded. "I know. I won't guard the exit with him." Han Fei even heard someone's voice transmission. Is this Fish Dragon King out of his mind? Why does he still want to fight at the moment of life and death? Someone was speechless. "Ignore him. Stay close to the exit. Once you find it impossible, just leave. Anyway, after we go out, he can't kill us in front of so many strong masters." Han Fei listened to the voice transmission of these sea demons, his face full of disdain. Han Fei blocked with his spear. "I want to point my spear at the sea of blood and kill 100 more people." Chapter 1247. The countless blood demons were dumbfounded. Is this guy out of his mind? We have more than 500 people, and you're blocking the exit with more than 200 people. Can you stop us? Seeing this, Yu Kailing couldn't help but roll her eyes. However, in the end, she still reminded him, "Master Dragon King, don't be impulsive. We don't have enough people." Han Fei turned around and glared at her. "I'll never be schemed against." Han Fei glanced at the blood demons and shouted, "Tell me, who schemed against me? If she comes out to die, I won't make things difficult for you." A particularly enormous Millennium Snapper suddenly turned into a glamorous, red-haired woman. This person pointed at Han Fei. "Are you the Fish Dragon King? I'd like to see what makes a heavenly talent from the Baibei Royal City, who ranks 10th on the heavenly talent list yelling here." Chu Feng said to her via voice transmission, "Horror, don't underestimate this person. This person is so strong that even the cursed demonic fish can't do anything to him." The woman called Hor frowned. She had just arrived. Hearing that Han Fei was so strong, she was slightly alarmed. However, how scared was she? Not much. At this moment, for the blood demons whose souls were generally strong, they could already perceive the black tide of immortal insects. From the sea to the sky, it was dark and covered more than 300 meters thick, like a shocking gray and black wave. At this moment, they had no time to think anymore. Because if they didn't rush out now, it would be too late. If they were really covered by the tide of immortal insects, it would be impossible for them to come out alive. When the number reached an extreme, no matter how weak the tide of immortal insects was, it couldn't be underestimated. Of course, no one would underestimate this tide of immortal insects. Horror shouted, "Kill them all! Red leaf saber, explode!" Swish! Swish! The red leaves in the sky were all like the leaf knife wheels of the big red trunk. When Han Fei heard the woman shouting to explode, his eyes slightly narrowed. This woman must be the real leader of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City this time, right? The leaf knife wheels were still divine weapons no matter how weak they were. Moreover, these people were all at the peak of the sea spirit realm. They had long been trying to improve their strength and the quality of their weapons. Therefore, there were only a few low-grade divine armament saber wheels here, and the rest were all mid-grade and above. Among them, high-grade divine weapons accounted for at least 1/10 of them. Roar! Han Fei's spear shot out like a dragon. A water dragon surged out, and a soul-shaking dragon roar resounded. Kill! Instead of retreating, Han Fei took a step forward and charged at the Millennium Snappers and women in red who were squeaking. Behind Han Fei, many people's faces changed drastically. Is this King Fish Dragon King crazy? In such a situation, you're really going to rush up? The undying insect tide is about to arrive, aren't you afraid? The moment Han Fei took action, more than a dozen people in the crowd followed him. They felt that if they made a move now, they would definitely leave a deep impression on the Dragon King. Of course, even if they took action, they just blocked the exit and didn't attack the Blood Demon's formation like Han Fei did. Swish! The spear in Han Fei's hand trembled, and a green-spotted conch companion spirit blocked in front of Han Fei, trying to block. Unfortunately, no one expected that Han Fei's strength was so strong. The green-spotted conch was directly pierced through with a big hole. Monkey King 3000 strikes. Bam! 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 Han Fei rushed into the crowd of blood demons alone, and the woman named Fire shouted, "The rest of you, charge! I'll deal with this one." Fire body. However, Hor-Er's body suddenly began to burn with fiery red flames. It was as if he was a fire spirit that did not have a physical body. Except for two sapphire-like eyes, this fire elf had no lower body, and her tail was like a wisp of smoke that drilled out of the mouth of a kettle. The fire demon's arms were like awls, and in the blink of an eye, thousands of thorn shadows shot out. Bam! 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 As soon as the two sides met, Han Fei defeated almost all the cone shadows. The final blow blew up her flaming body. And then, a lot of flames that dissipated in the void reassembled on the other side and turned into a human again. Han Fei grinned. "My flame is my body. Interesting." Han Fei said, "I can't kill you in a short time. Is it the same for the others?" However, when Han Fei turned his head, he found that there were only about 100 sea demons left. At that time Han Fei cursed, *****, a bunch of cowards. How can you become sea spirits? Yu Kailing and Lan Shuer were among the people who disappeared. In Yu Kailing's words, the Ichthyosaur king had treated everyone as him, and was constantly seeking death. She finally knew why the Fish Dragon King was thrown out of the outer sea to gain experience. He was the one who had brought this upon himself. The rest of the sea demons, seeing that there were only about 100 people on their side, couldn't resist the charge of more than 500 people? After all, at this critical moment, all the blood demons had rushed over. In terms of numbers, they were all here. At that time, all the sea demons retreated. Fire sneered. "What's the point of being strong? Look, no one will accompany you to die for your own selfish desires." Han Fei grinned. "Haha. Only in this way can I show my unparalleled bravery." Kill. The crazier Han Fei was, the more speechless Fire and the others were. "Didn't we just ambush you? So, you can't be ambushed by others?" When most of the sea demons passed by Han Fei and Fire who were fighting, Han Fei said in his heart, "Old turtle, I'm going to kill this woman. If anything happens, remember to cover for me." Swish. Just when Hor felt that Han Fei couldn't kill her, she didn't have a good impression of Han Fei in her heart. She thought that Han Fei was just a brute. However, when most of the blood demons had fled to the exit and the tide of immortal insects was only 100 kilometers away, Han Fei roared angrily, shaking Fire's soul. Chu Feng's face changed drastically and she shouted, "Fish Dragon King, are you courting death? If you don't run now, no one will be able to escape." Han Fei grinned. "Who can stop me, Fish Dragon King? This woman should be the strongest person in your Blood Sea Divine Wood City, right? I'm definitely going to kill her." Qilu. Seeing that Fire was frozen and couldn't recover, Chu Feng knew that she must be injured. In order to save her companions, Chu Feng took out a very special weapon, which looked like a mass of blood. Chu Feng shouted, "Since you want to die, you'll never come out. Fire, it's up to you." In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name Bloody Visceral Thunder. Introduction. A corrosive thunder made of the blood sea divine wood and lightning. It contains strange poison. Once ordinary people touch it, their meridians, flesh, energy, and soul will be corroded, and they will eventually become a pool of dirty blood. Quality. High-quality divine weapon, soul attachment, none effect, corruption, corrosion, recastable, unrefined. Remark: the range of the explosion is 8,000 meters. Fire, who had just come back to himself, screamed, "Chu Feng, do you want me to die?" The moment Chu Feng threw out the bloody visceral thunder, she thought to herself, "It's not a loss to trade you for the Fish Dragon King." At the moment when the bloody visceral thunder burst out, Chu Feng stepped into the exit. And Han Fei and Fire were faced with the bloody visceral thunder in front and the tide of insects behind. In Chu Feng's view, there was no hope of survival at all. At the moment Chu Feng went out, the space in front of Han Fei was twisted, and he had already appeared in the swarm of insects 8,000 meters away. And Fire still had a body of flames. However, at the moment when the bloody visceral thunder burst out, a lot of black threads appeared in the flames. As soon as the swarm of insects rushed over, many undead creatures began to melt rapidly after entering the bloody visceral thunder, turning into a mass of dirty water. There were also some insects and birds who didn't have time to go out and were rushing to the exit. Seeing this scene, they shouted, "Go around and get out of this area!" When the insect race and the sky race left as well, the crazed insect swarm suddenly came to a halt. Han Fei was standing leisurely on the back of a beetle. The water deity's voice echoed casually, "What's your purpose in creating a hostile relationship between yourself and those blood demons?" Han Fei said with a bitter smile, "I can't fight the Shuemu heaven, so I can only fight the blood demons." The water deity said, "As long as you know what you're doing. Remember, you must find a way to find my real body as soon as possible. You only have 100 years. Han Fei's lips twitched. "Master, I'm only in my early 20s. The water deity spat. "Pretentious. You've already lived for 50 years in the Age of Doom. Go." The outside world was already a mess. Under normal circumstances, nobody would come out until the end of the third day of the opening of the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. But all of a sudden, a large group of people rushed out of the entrance with a swoosh. Immediately, the experts of the Shuemu Heaven, the Baibei Royal City, and the Blood Sea Divine Wood were all surprised. "What's going on? Why are all the people of the Shuemu Heaven out?" Someone said in surprise, "What's going on? It's been less than a day and it's already over?" A human explorer exclaimed, "Hiss! What happened in there?" A sea demon venerable glanced around. 628 So many died in one day? The sea demons and the blood demon experts were all surprised. The probability of death was as high as 40%, and it had only been less than a day. If they stayed here for 3 days, wouldn't they all be killed? Wushang Shui stepped out of the void, glanced around and said, "Be quiet. Young man, what's going on?" Young man said solemnly, "Greetings, Venerable Snow. The Fish Dragon King of the Baibei Royal City has gone mad." The Fish Dragon King had gone mad? Immediately, Prime Minister Turtle Gui Sanqing, who had been following the Fish Dragon, changed his expression, but he didn't say anything. After all, they were from the Shuemu Heaven. They wouldn't answer even if he asked. But then, after only a few seconds, a group of sea demons rushed out. However, there were only a little more than 500 of them. Immediately, someone shouted, "What's going on? Where are they?" First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1248. It was obvious that something was wrong. The venerables of the Baibei Royal City were greatly shocked. Almost 2,000 people went in, and only 500 came out? More importantly, it was only one day. Are you kidding me? Gui Sanqing glanced around and immediately pointed at Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer, saying, "Why did you two come out first? Where is young Master Dragon King?" Lon Schwer's body was slightly stiffened, but Yu Kaling said calmly, Master Dragon King is on a killing spree inside. Yu Kaling was right. Han Fei was indeed on a killing spree inside. Gui Sanqing's face turned cold. Young Master Dragon King is still inside. Why did you two come out first? Yu Kaling said, Master, we came out because we couldn't do anything even if we were inside. A super-large tide of immortal insects broke out in the thousand-mountain ancient realm. We couldn't resist such a terrifying natural disaster at all. A tide of immortal insects? Instantly, everybody looked at Yu Kaling. A venerable asked, Tell me, where did the tide of immortal insects come from on the first day? Yu Kaling bowed apologetically. Master, I really don't know. We were ambushed by blood demons the moment we entered the thousand-mountain ancient realm. Almost all the attendants of Master Dragon King died in the battle, and we were separated from Master Dragon King. The two of us were separated from the Dragon King because of this. This should be the reason why the Dragon King is fighting the blood demon. Yes, Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer didn't know about the 9 sounds of the Great Path. Only the Blood Sea Divine Wood City was good at killing people with music. Only their incantations were a field that everyone was completely unfamiliar with. Immediately, Gui Sanqing and the venerables of the Baibei Royal City all looked at the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. One of the twin sisters of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City roared, It's normal for them to ambush each other. Who knew that the 10th expert on the heavenly talent ranking of the Baibei Royal City would be so vulnerable? Humph! It was a fair battle. Every time, it would usually be the White Shell Royal City's side that won. This time was an exception. Another person roared, Who else is inside? Where's Yu Hong? A clam girl looked awful. Where's Shui Hongyan? Could it be that he's defending against the Fish Dragon King inside? Not waiting for Yu Kaling and the others to answer, an insect shouted from the Shuemu heaven's side, They must be dead, your sea demons are almost gone. A bug echoed, Yes, they were all eaten by the big red fish. Those big red fish are really fierce. A bird pecked the bug with its beak. What big red fish? It's a blood demon. Swish 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 on Shuemu Tion's side, Buggy and the big bird had just finished messing around. As soon as the sea demon finished tasting it, she was about to question it when she saw a group of Millennium Snappers rush out of the ancient realm. The blood demons seemed to be very good at transforming, especially in the form of fish when they were running away. The twin venerables from the Blood Sea Sacred Wood City looked at each other, and their expressions changed. One of them said, 591 people. Why are there only so few people left? Chu Feng, is there anyone else? However, Chu Feng's expression was unsightly. Lord Shuran, the others. I'm afraid they have all perished. Hiss. Shui Ran and Shui Qin were stunned for a moment. Did this mean that there were only a few dozen more survivors than the White Shell Royal City? Shui Qin asked, Where's Fire? Could it be that he has also fallen? Chu Feng gnashed her teeth and said, Just now, Fire stopped the Fish Dragon King of the White Shell Royal City to give everyone a chance to escape. At this moment, as she spoke, Chu Feng looked at the entrance. However, as soon as she said that, she saw swishing sounds. Nearly 100 bugs and dozens of big birds quickly rushed out of the entrance. A big bug shouted, Wow! That's terrifying! What is that bloody mist? Can it even melt the undead creatures? A big bird shouted, Fortunately, I flew a little slower, or I would have been hit. The half-mermaid venerables looked awful. What a great Shuemu Tian! The probability of death is only about 20%. A bug buzzed, I'm so angry. A bug muttered, Who asked them to snatch the opportunity? Whoever tries to snatch such a great opportunity will die. Another bug muttered, Fortunately we met them, BEM. Before the bug finished, Shu Xiaoman kicked its head. Shut up, all of you. It had to be said that the insects were all big mouth. His IQ was even higher than that of the war giant. He almost spilled out Han Fei's secret. Wushang Shui smiled, looked at the entrance again, and asked, "Are there any survivors inside?" The bug that just rushed out said, "I saw a man with a red spear go into the tide of bugs. He's hopeless." A big bird said, "I saw a man on fire. He seemed to have gone into the tide of bugs too." A sea demon said, "It's the Dragon King. When we came out, the Dragon King was still fighting the blood demon." Chu Feng was secretly relieved to hear that both of them had fallen into the tide of bugs. Suddenly, she glanced at Yang Ruoyun, and her eyes turned cold. There was no such thing as "don't wash your dirty linen in public." Chu Feng said bluntly, "Lord Xueran, Lord Shuaqin, Yang Ruoyun conspired with the White Shell Royal City's Fish Dragon King to kill our Blood Sea Divine Wood City's experts. By the time I found out, there were probably no less than 100 of our clansmen who died in their hand." The Flower Sisters' faces immediately turned cold, and they immediately stared at Yang Ruoyun unkindly. How could they tolerate this? In the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, they could fight however they wanted. However, how could they tolerate this kind of behavior in the outside world? Yang Ruoyun seemed to have known that she would be exposed. At this moment, she was extremely calm and her brain was working fast. She said, "Venerables, Chu Feng only saw one side of the matter and didn't see the other side. When this matter is over, Ruoyun will definitely give a reasonable answer. It's just that it's not convenient to talk about this matter now." Chu Feng's eyes immediately turned cold. She had seen it with her own eyes. And more than one person had seen it. "Do you have any reason to refute this?" She saw clearly that Yang Ruoyun was vicious and ruthless to her clansmen. No matter how Yang Ruoyun explained, she wanted this person to die. Xueran snorted, and Yang Ruoyun suddenly knelt on the sea and vomited 3 mouthfuls of blood. Xueran said ruthlessly, "No matter what the reason is, you must be severely punished for killing your clansmen. Let's see how you explain yourself in the future." The venerables from the Baibei Royal City, however, were a little surprised. The Fish Dragon King had always thought highly of itself. Why would it cooperate with the Blood Demon? On the Shuemu Heaven side, Wushang Shui couldn't help but think, is it the Fish Dragon King? Or is it Han Fei? She had already found out from Jing that it was impossible for the Fish Dragon King to survive as long as Han Fei was there. So, the person in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm right now was actually Han Fei, right? Wushang Shui said to Jing who was hiding in the void and eating hot pot, "Stop eating." What a scandal! Jing really came out after being called many times. When she came out, there was still a bit of grease on the corner of her mouth. Jing glanced around. "I didn't expect that this trip to the 1,000-year ancient realm would end so soon. Young man, did you get anything from this trip?" Young man bowed slightly. "Emissary Jing, this trip was quite hasty. Except for the unusual movements in the mountains and the outbreak of the immortal insects, we didn't really get many treasures." Jing said carelessly, "Oh, is that so? Then, was it the unusual movements in the mountains that swallowed those sea demons, or the insect tide that ate them?" Young man nodded. "Both. However, when the mountain moved, there was a terrifying mist. No one who entered could come out. It was precisely because of this that so many people had fallen in a single day. Some people from our Shuemu Heaven also disappeared in the mist. The people from the Baibei Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City were stunned. The people who came out just now didn't say anything about the unusual movements in the mountains or the man-eating mist," Jing said lazily. "Look, the reason why so many people from your 2 sides died has been revealed. You must be too greedy and don't have the safety awareness of our Shuemu Heaven. Let's go." Venerable Shueqin said coldly, "It's not 3 days yet. Since you said that some people were lost in it, there might be a way to get out." Swish. Just as Shueqin finished speaking, a figure flashed by the entrance. Everyone turned to look at Zhang Xian. The first thing they saw was a ball of flames. The newcomer was bathed in flames. When they took a closer look, they found that the Fish Dragon King of the Baibei Royal City was covered in blood. He was holding a spear in his left hand and holding the neck of fire, the heavenly talent of the blood sea divine wood city, in the air. At that moment, the whole audience was silent. This final scene seemed to have a hint of blood and desolation. Lan Shuer turned her head away. This B** starred is powerful, but he's too disgusting. Young man's eyes flickered. If he remembered correctly, the heavenly talents of the sea demons and the blood sea divine wood city had all been defeated by Han Fei. She couldn't help but think, Yin-Yang Heaven? What kind of place is the Yin-Yang Heaven? Could it be that that place was watered by blood and the flames of war? Gotcha! Han Fei threw fire to the sea demon camp, only to see him say fiercely, I thought the so-called heavenly talents of the blood sea divine wood city were powerful. I didn't expect that they were no match for me. After that, Han Fei tilted his head, glanced at the blood demon, and said fiercely, How dare you ambush me? This is the price. After that, Han Fei looked at the venerables on his side, and then at the followers of Yu Hong and Shui Hongyan. Han Fei grinned. No need to wait. Shui Hongyan has been killed by me. He has already been fed to the worms. I haven't met that B***starred Yu Hong. However, since he hasn't come out, I'm afraid he won't be able to come out. Yu Kaling looked complicated. For some reason, she felt that although this Fish Dragon King was still arrogant, he seemed to be more domineering than the previous Fish Dragon King. It was overbearing in the truest sense of the word. It was not just overbearing that came out from his mouth. However, Yu Kaling didn't doubt it. After all, she didn't know much about the Fish Dragon King. Gui Sanqing, who seemed to be the guardian of the Fish Dragon King, was looking at Han Fei with a smile. Han Fei then raised his chin proudly at him, and said in his heart, Old Turtle, has this little turtle been killed by you? Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1249. Han Fei left Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm as the Fish Dragon King. Strong and domineering. One raised his eyebrow while the other tilted his head. The height of his chin was extremely consistent with the arrogant look of the Ichthyosaur King in the past. However, no matter how well he imitated her, he wasn't the real one. Especially those who were very familiar with the Ichthyosaur King, such as Gui Sanqing, who was half a venerable, he needed to be dealt with as soon as possible. In his mind, the old tortoise's voice spoke. I'm currently devouring Yuandao's soul vessel. It will take around 4 more hours. Han Fei was speechless. It only takes a short while for them to possess someone's body. You, a dignified emperor, have been seizing the body for more than a day and you still haven't finished? Roar! The old turtle said angrily. What do you know? Was this a normal possession? This was a possession without anyone noticing. I've only given out a little bit of my will, so the difficulty is many times higher than normal possession. Moreover, this king still needs to absorb this person's soul and control his body, combat skills, law enforcement abilities, and various great daos. Do you think that it's over just by snatching a body? The old tortoise's words made sense. Although the old turtle was only temporarily using Yuandao's body. But he still had to learn it. Otherwise, if he were to be exposed, he would be finished. Young Master Dragon King, both of you are elites of Royal City. Isn't it a little too much for you to say that young Master Red Flame died in your hands? A clam girl stood out. She was already middle-aged and her face was ashen. Han Fei smiled disdainfully. What do you want? Are you going to denounce me? Han Fei arrogantly glanced at the clam girl from the corner of his eyes. Then, he walked towards Hua-Er step by step and even kicked him. Although this person's strength is not weak, he is still not the person who ambushed me. I knew that there must be a top heavenly talent hiding among the blood demons. Heh! If you have the ability, then don't ever show it off. Otherwise, I will find you sooner or later. As he spoke, he glanced at Chu Feng and the other blood demons. When he glanced at Yang Ruoyun, he purposely paused for 2 more seconds before looking at the others. Yang Ruoyun really wanted to twist Han Fei's head off at this moment. Although Han Fei's eyes only stayed on his body for 2 more seconds, he was still shocked. Just one more glance and he didn't know how much he would have to explain. Besides, Yang Ruoyun wanted to make a fuss about Han Fei killing his clansmen. However, Han Fei was too straightforward. He straightforwardly stated that he had killed another heavenly talent of the Bai Bei royal city. Moreover, he acted as if it was only natural. He didn't even bat an eyelid when he killed a top prodigy from the White Shell Kingdom. So what if he killed a few ordinary half-mermen? Of course, Han Fei mentioned the top heavenly talent who ambushed him several times, which made Yang Ruoyun's heart skip a beat. If the Ichthyosaur King could kill Little Flame, wouldn't the blood demon that ambushed her be even stronger? More importantly, was there really such a person? Was it possible for a single person to ambush a group of people like Han Fei? Also, the Ichthyosaur King seemed to be targeting the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Yes, from the very beginning, the Ichthyosaur King had been very targeted. What if there was no such person? If everything was fabricated by the Ichthyosaur King, then what was his motive? At this moment, Yang Ruoyun was shocked. This Ichthyosaur King was far more cunning than he showed. Fake, it must be fake. If there really was such a strong master on her side, there was no reason for him to hide. She had to become such a top heavenly talent in order to survive today's disaster. However, the Ichthyosaur King was really strong, and she was still far from it. Chu Feng and the others looked at Han Fei in a different way again. Although they were very angry at Han Fei's contemptuous eyes, they really couldn't beat him. In their eyes, this Ichthyosaur King was really strong. Therefore, they couldn't blame him for being so conceited and arrogant. However, Gui Sanqing frowned slightly and said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "Young master." Han Fei understood what Gui Sanqing meant. Gui Sanqing was reminding him not to be too arrogant. Han Fei snorted and walked back to his camp step by step. Because Han Fei didn't know the close distance technique, he could only walk. Of course, when he walked, Han Fei's eyes fell on Lan Shuer and Yu Kailing, and he snorted softly. Just when everyone's eyes fell on Han Fei, Jing was secretly sweating in her heart. Isn't his acting too good? Just looking at his arrogant and conceited posture, I want to go up and kick him. On the other side, Shui Ran and Venerable Shui Qin of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, after hearing Han Fei's words, both glanced at the heavenly talents in front of them. Could it be that among these people, there was a top heavenly talent that even they hadn't discovered? It was also at this moment that the kneeling Yang Ruoyun seemed to be concealing her aura. This made them a little confused. With your little strength, why are you concealing yourself? Shui Qin giggled. The Ichthyosaur King of the Bai Bei royal city is not bad. I'll remember this name. When Shui Qin talked about him, Han Fei tilted his head and glanced at her, the corners of his mouth unconsciously curling up. Even in the face of a venerable, he still had a trace of arrogance. His expression was very annoying, as if saying, "So what if you remember me?" When he returned to Gui Sanqing's side, Han Fei preemptively said to him via voice transmission, "Let's talk about it later." While talking, Han Fei secretly activated the Supreme Token in Forge the Universe. Seeing that Jing subconsciously glanced at him, he quickly looked back at her. Of course, Gui Sanqing didn't think that the Fish Dragon King could communicate with the venerables of other families under his nose. Although he had a lot of doubts, young Master Dragon King said that he would talk about it later. Obviously, he couldn't say anything at this moment. That was why he had to wait. However, Han Fei said in his heart, "Old Turtle, I've bought you some time." The old turtle said, "You Wendao can't show up anymore. You have to trick this turtle out alone and avoid the venerable's eyes." Han Fei wanted to vomit blood, thinking, how the F***ck can I avoid the venerable's eyes? After reaching the venerable realm, Han Fei once suspected that he could perceive things as far as 10,000 kilometers or even farther. Although no one had ever said so. However, judging from their looks as if they knew everything and could see everything, it was hard to believe that their perception couldn't be as far as 10,000 kilometers. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Come on, tell me, how can I avoid the Venerable? As long as he pays attention to me, how can I disappear from his sight?" The old turtle sneered. "Do you think that the Venerable's perception range is very wide? That he can even clearly know everything within tens of thousands of kilometers?" Han Fei asked rhetorically. "Isn't it?" The old turtle sneered. "No one can control everything, not even a king. Do you think he has nothing to do and will go to see what you do every day?" Han Fei muttered, "It's because I'm too dazzling now." The old turtle despised him. "No matter how dazzling you are just a peak-level sea spirit. Let me tell you, the perception of a Venerable can indeed be very far. But that's perception, not coverage. It's the same as your perception now. You just need to reduce your sense of existence. No one will stare at you for no reason. After all, you have a half-Venerable guarding you." Han Fei thought to himself, "That's right. As long as I'm not omniscient, it's fine." Han Fei couldn't help but think, "My junior sister, the Life Queen, is very powerful. She found that I had mixed in with the sea demons without even looking. However, I wonder if the Life Queen knows that I am her senior brother? If she knows that my senior brother is only a junior explorer, will she slap me to death? Or throw a lot of awesome resources at me?" Jing was the first to become impatient. "Law enforcers, go back. There's nothing for you to do here." The experts of the two royal cities naturally refused to leave. After all, their losses this time were too great. 70% of the heavenly talents died in a mere 1,000-mountain ancient realm, which was twice the number before. They couldn't believe that so many heavenly talents were swallowed by a cloud of mist. A half-mermaid Venerable looked at Han Fei. "Dragon King, have you ever encountered the mountain mist that can swallow people?" Han Fei shook his head. "No. I've been fighting a blood demon whose identity I don't know. From the beginning to the end, I didn't even go to a mountain." The Venerable One grunted and said impatiently, "See Spirit Realm cultivators, go back." On the Blood Sea Divine Wood City's side, Xuan said casually, "Take Yang Ruoyun back for interrogation." Han Fei glanced at Gui Sanqing. "Let's go." 100 seconds after leaving the entrance of the 1,000-mountain ancient realm, Han Fei changed directions and separated from the team. Gui Sanqing asked, "Young master, are we not going back to the Ice God Gorge?" Han Fei said solemnly, "No. Let's go first. I'll tell you later." Seeing Han Fei's weird expression, Gui Sanqing didn't ask further. He guessed that something must have happened to Han Fei. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left the team so eagerly. Half an hour later, Gui Sanqing said again, "Young master, I don't think anyone will notice us now." Han Fei secretly pinched his fingers and didn't find anything wrong. He then said solemnly, "I feel that my Dragon King bloodline is about to be awakened. I need to find a safe place to cultivate in seclusion." Gui Sanqing was puzzled. "Young master, hasn't the Dragon King bloodline been awakened a long time ago?" Han Fei thought of something. "No, I'm talking about the second awakening. Although I was ambushed, I felt that the bloodline in my body was restless. There seemed to be something wrong." Gui Sanqing was refreshed. "No wonder I felt that young Master Dragon King was a bit weird. Was the Dragon King bloodline going to be awakened for the second time? Although he had never heard of such a thing as a bloodline, could there be a second awakening? However, in the world of heavenly talents, who could understand it? Just because he hadn't seen it didn't mean it didn't exist. Who dared to neglect it? Immediately, Gui Sanqing said solemnly, "Young master, then shouldn't we go back to the Ice God Gorge to awaken?" Han Fei shook his head. "No, this is my trump card. I can't let others know it. Sanqing, although I'm conceited, I'm not stupid. What if I awaken the strongest bloodline? How many of those guys can tolerate me? Sanqing, you're the only one I can trust now." Gui Sanqing took a deep breath and said with a red face, "Young master, Sanqing is willing to sacrifice my life for young master." Chapter 1250. Han Fei could still fool Gui Sanqing temporarily. As long as the old turtle controlled Yu Wendao to arrive, it would be fine. After he was at least 200,000 kilometers away from the thousand-mountain ancient realm, Han Fei found a trench at the bottom of the sea and crawled into it. 2 hours later, in Han Fei's heart, the old turtle's voice rang out, "I'm coming. I need your soul-shocking roar to cooperate with me. Leave the rest to this empress." Han Fei was pretending to practice the demon god scripture, making the demonic energy vortexes around him constantly. Han Fei hurriedly said, "Hurry up, I can't pretend anymore." In this world, the simplest attack was a sneak attack. Only the kind of unexpected sneak attack was the most difficult to avoid. Although Han Fei should be able to stop Gui Sanqing if he attacked directly. However, that would definitely make Gui Sanqing somewhat wary. Han Fei activated the Beast King art. Although Han Fei was definitely not familiar with real dragons, it was not a big problem for him to transform. Unfortunately, when he was in the 100,000 mountains, there was a creature that looked like a dragon, called the Titan Python. Unfortunately, that guy was too lazy. There were too many creatures in the 100,000 mountains, so Han Fei didn't learn from it. But no matter what, Han Fei's body suddenly began to change. Gui Sanqing had been guarding him. Suddenly seeing Han Fei's body grow longer and a large number of scales appear on his body, he was a little surprised. Is this the second awakening? However, Han Fei's body quickly changed, and in the blink of an eye, a 5-clawed golden dragon appeared in front of Gui Sanqing. Wow! Gui Sanqing was dumbfounded. Is this the real power of my young master's bloodline? This is the legendary dragon clan. Oh! Suddenly, there was an earth-shaking dragon roar, like the roar of 100 beasts. The soul-suppressing roar of 100 beasts directly exploded in the ears of the defenseless Gui Sanqing, making his head buzz. But at this moment, Han Fei launched the sacrificing punch with all his strength. Han Fei didn't care whether he would break this turtle or not. If a semi-venerable could be broken by his punch, it wouldn't be a semi-venerable at all. Besides, this was a turtle. A tortoise carries a shell on its back every day. Even a fool would know that its defense is very strong. Buzz! A huge wave of fist shadows enveloped the tortoise. Following this, the rift was torn apart and Yu Wendao appeared. At that moment, Yu Dao, who had been possessed by the old tortoise, pressed his hand on the tortoise's shell. At that moment, an incomparably huge black tortoise shell came down and pinned Gui Sanqing to the ground. Seeing this scene, Han Fei exclaimed, "Oh, old turtle, you're really something. Summoning a turtle shell out of thin air and suppressing a half-venerable?" The old tortoise snapped, "What are you doing? I have my own methods. This wasn't a tortoise shell. This was the tortoise shell heaven sealing technique. Once I use this technique, I can silently and directly take down this person. No one will be able to see this. With my Taoist aura, even a monarch wouldn't be able to see what's happening here." Han Fei curled his lips and said, "Hee hee. Just say that you still have hidden strength." Roar! Bang! At this moment, Gui Sanqing realized that he had been tricked. What the F***ck is the second bloodline awakening? This is not the young master of the Dragon King at all. The question is, when was the young master of the Dragon King replaced? When did Yu Wendao go wrong? This doesn't make sense. Gui Sanqing was struggling at this moment, looking at the Fish Dragon King, who had turned back into a human form and was talking and laughing, only to tremble all over. Even though he was bleeding from all his orifices and felt that his soul was being torn apart, he couldn't help but roar, "Who the hell are you?" Han Fei raised his chin. "Me? I am the Fish Dragon King." In the face of such a half-venerable creature, Han Fei certainly couldn't reveal his true identity. Even now, he seemed to be in an absolutely safe state. The old tortoise cackled. You are too curious. Why do you talk so much nonsense when you are about to die? It's the glory of your life for me to use your body. Gue Sanshin growled and tried to self-destruct. However, the old tortoise pressed his tortoise shell with one hand and his head with the other. Han Fei only saw that the blue soul fire was abruptly pulled out by a black mist. Of course, Han Fei knew that it was the soul, but he was surprised that the old tortoise was already so strong. The soul of a half-venerable was pulled out so easily? In Han Fei's heart, the old tortoise said, "It's not that I can easily crush a half-venerable now, but because it and I are both tortoises. If I hadn't lost my Tao, I could have made him kneel on the ground with just a thought, unable to move." Han Fei snorted. "Stop bragging. You're bragging so much. Anyway, in the end, it's so troublesome to kill a half-venerable and I have to cooperate with you." About 10 minutes later, in Gue Sanqing's soul, the screams gradually disappeared, and the soul turned into spots of blue light and was directly swallowed by the old tortoise. The surface of Yu Wendao's body seemed to become illusory, and a large amount of black gas was also sucked into Gue Sanqing's body. If it weren't for the fact that Han Fei was very familiar with the old tortoise, he would definitely think this was an evil technique when he saw such a weird scene. However, it did seem to be an evil technique. After another 10 minutes, Yu Wendao's body suddenly softened and he lay on the ground. Gue Sanqing suddenly opened his eyes, and his pupils were pitch black, but soon returned to normal. Gue Sanqing roared at the sky and grinned, "I've finally regained my freedom. I'm out." Han Fei looked at the old tortoise as if looking at a fool and curled his lips. Hey, don't howl. You don't even have a Tao now. You're only a half-venerable now. Even I can't kill you. What can you do after coming out?" Han Fei didn't lie. He and the old tortoise couldn't absolutely trust each other yet. However, Han Fei knew very well that when he exerted his full strength, although he couldn't beat a half-venerable, he might be able to run away. Besides, in terms of physique alone, Han Fei was confident that even a half-venerable might not be able to match him. With this, why should he be afraid? The old tortoise's face immediately turned cold. "Even if I don't have a Tao, I can still cultivate again. In only 10 years, I can improve the bloodline of this little turtle by a level, and its strength will be several times stronger." Han Fei murmured, 10 years? Maybe I'll become a king. You're still a half-venerable? You're really weak. The old tortoise bared his teeth and said fiercely, "What do you know? I'm just laying the foundation and setting up a Tao. If it weren't for the fact that this little turtle's bloodline is too poor, I would have become a venerable in 10 days and a half-venerable in 100 days. Believe it or not." Han Fei curled his lip. "Go away, stop bragging. Don't be so cocky just because you have one more body. If you encounter a venerable, you'll be killed with a slap. By the way, what about this Yu Wendao?" The old tortoise seemed to find it difficult to talk to Han Fei. He was happy to be reborn and didn't want to quarrel with Han Fei. At this moment, the old tortoise glanced at Yu Wendao and said contemptuously, "This is a piece of trash. His Tao has reached a certain level." He was originally an underwater human, and his body was almost the same as that of a human, but he had the talents of a sea demon. However, his body was destroyed by himself. Now, his soul has been shattered by me. Although he didn't die, he can't survive more than 3 days. Han Fei took a breath. What about his resources? The old tortoise couldn't help but raise a sun-moon shell and said, "They're all spiritual springs, spiritual fruits, demonic stones, mineral veins, and various deductions. I'll give them to you if you want. However, can you cast a heavenly awakening divine technique on my new body?" Impossible. Han Fei said contemptuously, "My lifespan and vitality have just been replenished. Do you want them? Who are you?" The old tortoise was speechless. This little turtle has internal injuries, and its spiritual heritage is not high, only level 6. In terms of internal injuries, It's about the same as a level 5 demonic heritage. How about this? I teach you the great puppet technique, and you cast a heavenly awakening divine technique on me. You only need 100 years of vitality. Han Fei shook his head. That won't do. Find a Tao-seeking state demon and swallow it yourself. The old tortoise said angrily, even if I swallow it myself, it won't have the effect of the heavenly awakening divine technique. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Then give me the resources first. Then you can catch a Tao-seeking state demon yourself. I'll give you as many years as I swallow it. The old tortoise was dumbfounded. You didn't even blink when you spent 2,000 years in the ancient realm. You still don't want to spend 100 years with me? Han Fei sneered. That's my teacher. Who are you? If it weren't for the restriction of the contract, maybe we would still be enemies. The old tortoise said with a black face. I am an emperor. Han Fei interrupted him. What opportunities can you give me? My teacher even wants to give me his original body world. What can you give me? The old tortoise roared. My Tao has been taken by you to make meridians. Han Fei snorted. That was taken by the gourd, not by me. That's a different matter. If you have the ability, ask the gourd for it. The old tortoise rolled his eyes and said, Do you know that after I teach you the great puppet technique, you can refine this Yuandao into a puppet? Can't a semi-venerable puppet compare to your 100 years of vitality? The point is, you can also suck it back from others. Han Fei also thought quickly. Is it really that awesome? Han Fei changed the topic. Okay, that's fine. However, the stronger you are, the more dangerous I am. I can't keep a threat around, so I have to pay more. The old tortoise seemed to see through Han Fei's idea. This guy actually doesn't care about the so-called 100 years of vitality at all. He's just raising the price. The old tortoise said tiredly, Tell me. 2 semi-venerable resources and 1 great puppet technique. What else do you want? Han Fei knew very well that in the eyes of different people, the value was often different. For example, if the old tortoise really disliked Gui Sanqing's body, would he possess it? Even if he did, he would at most use it temporarily and wouldn't spend much time on Gui Sanqing, for example, this Yuandao. At best, it was equivalent to an adapter. Then he was already a semi-venerable. Why did the old tortoise look down on him? Han Fei thought about it and immediately grinned. Simple. Teach me the most powerful technique. The old tortoise rolled his eyes and said, I knew it wouldn't be a good thing. However, you have already mastered the apocalyptic divine technique. Haven't you found the problem? Han Fei wondered, What problem? The old tortoise said, In the end, combat skills are attached to the Tao. Therefore, there is no so-called strongest combat skill at all. I have never seen the so-called strongest Tao. When you become a Taoist, this combat skill will definitely become your strongest combat skill. Han Fei thought, Is that so? Forget it. However, he had made the conditions and the old tortoise had agreed. How could he not ask for anything? Chapter 1251. Faced with Han Fei's bargaining, the old turtle said, Okay, you just want resources. You can have the sun-moon shells of Yuandao and Gui Sanqing. To be honest, I don't like them either. However, you should need more than me. Han Fei couldn't help asking, What do you have? The old turtle said, I have 2 million caddies of spiritual spring. There are a lot of other things. You can deal with them yourself. Han Fei's eyes lit up. 2 million caddies of spiritual spring, that's 2 billion points of spiritual energy, right? Damn it, is money coming in so fast these days? Once upon a time, he was worried about a few points of spiritual energy, but now he was talking about hundreds of millions? Sure enough, he had to find powerful people to fight. These people all had a lot of resources. The old turtle sneered. When you become a venerable, you will find that spiritual energy is everywhere in the world. But then you will know why you can't wake up a king even if you throw billions of points of spiritual energy. After all, spiritual energy is something for mortals. Once you become a king, it will be a leap in life level. You won't understand. Han Fei chuckled. I will understand. Han Fei's heart did a flip. It must be the chaotic qi. The immeasurable fruit was said to contain a trace of chaotic qi. However, during the tribulation, this energy fruit should have been unconsciously absorbed by him, and he didn't see any chaotic qi coming out. Forget it, I'll ask for it later. Anyway, the Life Queen is my junior sister. Isn't it natural for a senior brother to ask for something from his junior sister? Of course, Han Fei was too weak now, so he didn't want to embarrass himself. Anyway, the demon purification pot was still eating spiritual energy, but the amount it ate was getting bigger and bigger. In the future, what kind of high-level energy to feed the demon purification pot was a matter for the future. Now, as long as it could be fed with spiritual energy, it would be fine. Han Fei said, Okay, I can also cast the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique on you. But shouldn't we find a safe and secluded place to hide? Otherwise, as soon as the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique is cast, a beam of light will fall from the sky, and we will be exposed, won't we? The old turtle said, No need to be so troublesome. Why do you think I spent so much effort to create this turtle shell sky sealing technique? There was a price to pay. It was forcefully executed with a small portion of Yu Wendao's life force. I will only seal this place for 3 days and 3 nights, so that the outside world will not notice. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. That's awesome. Can I learn it? The old turtle sneered. The turtle race's secret arts require a person's constitution. First of all, you need a shell. If you go find a turtle to possess, this emperor doesn't mind teaching you. Forget it then. Han Fei still took the 2 sun moon shells. It couldn't be helped. His current level wasn't high enough, and he didn't need to be that high. A small favor of 2 billion yuan was enough to move him. He also needed to save up some resources. Although the water deity had said that as long as he could find her within 100 years, it would be fine. However, he couldn't even see the future of the Shuemu sky in the next 3 years. Who knew what would happen in 100 years? So, where was the real body of the water immortal? This was something that needed to be solved urgently, unless they really couldn't find it. However, even if he found it, he would still need a huge amount of resources to replenish the spiritual energy and life force of the water immortal for tens of thousands of years. The Heavenly Awakening Divine Art descended again, and Han Fei found that there was no more beam of light to the sky. The beam of light was only 100 meters high, as if shot out from the void, and directly shone on the old turtle. In his heart, the old turtle said, This is not light, this is the aura of the Tao. So, where it appears can be controlled. As for the techniques, that's the difference between those who have entered the Tao and those who haven't. If you've entered the Tao, how to use the Heavenly Awakening Divine Art depends on your mood. Han Fei watched Gui Sanqing's body slowly grow a little taller. There were some strange lines printed on the tortoise shell. However, they soon disappeared. Han Fei felt that his vitality was almost the same as 100 years, so he immediately stopped the Heavenly Awakening Divine Art. The old turtle muttered, Actually, it doesn't matter if you give me a little more. Anyway, there will be plenty of opportunities to hunt Tao-seeking state powerhouses in the future. Your vitality will eventually be made up. Han Fei nodded. Then let's talk about it when it's made up. How much did the Heavenly Awakening Divine Art heal? Han Fei didn't know. But he thought, anyway, 100 years of vitality shouldn't be a lot. After all, when he wanted to wake up the water fairy, it took him nearly 2,000 years of vitality. Even then, he had to rely on the spring of life and more than 1 billion spiritual energy to wake up the water fairy. Gui Sanqing said, Sure enough, the Heavenly Awakening Divine Art directly completely recovered 80% of the foundation damage left by this little turtle. I think if you are confident that you can always be invincible, in fact, you shouldn't be weak on the Heavenly Awakening path. At least, this path has been confirmed. The road to becoming a king has already been stronger than 99% of the people in this world. Han Fei curled his lips. Humph! Don't talk nonsense. Give me the great puppet technique. The old turtle took out a jade slip casually, pinched it with one hand, and quickly injected spiritual energy into it. After only 1 second, a technique jade slip was formed and was thrown to Han Fei. The old turtle said, "The great puppet technique has extremely high requirements for refining. Why do you have to be at least a venerable to practice this great puppet technique?" One of the reasons is the limitation of refining. Only when you reach the venerable realm can you learn things extremely fast. When you reach the pioneer sea realm, it will be even faster. Of course, your refining skills are not bad. You should be able to use it. Han Fei took the great puppet technique and didn't care. He was thinking about a question. What are there so many puppets in the Immortal Palace for? Whether it is the Yin-Yang Palace or the Waterwood Immortal Palace, there are many puppets. And under the steps into the sea, what's the difference between refining puppets and raising puppets? Han Fei scanned with his perception and information popped up in his mind. Great puppet technique, venerable level, low quality, introduction. The method of refining puppets uses the power of heaven to destroy the soul of a living being before it completely dies and scatter it into the flesh and blood of the body. With the method of refining, the law is the source, and a wisp of one's own soul is integrated to reforge a spiritless body. After the puppet is refined, a wisp of the soul will become an ownerless soul and will have a telepathic connection after the refining. Deduced art. Dragon raising technique deduction cost. 1 billion note. It needs to be refined when the body has not decayed and the soul has not completely dissipated. Han Fei had never seen such a technique before. And it was a venerable level, low-quality one. It could be seen that puppets were actually rarer than he thought. Although the void lines could control living beings and turn them into their puppets, the void lines could not be used to control living beings. However, that required the void lines to control them all the time. And this great puppet technique didn't seem to need him to control it at all. It only needed a wisp of his soul. Why would Han Fei care about this? It was just a wisp of his soul. As long as he killed a few enemies, he could make up for the lost soul. Looking at the 1 billion points of spiritual energy and the dragon raising technique, Han Fei couldn't help but be curious. The steps into the sea should be the puppet raising technique, right? Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Old Yuan, I know this puppet technique. But I've seen a technique to suppress corpses. Is that also refining corpses?" The old turtle was feeling his new body. Hearing Han Fei's question, he said, "You're talking about the puppet raising technique, which is much more advanced than the great puppet technique. With the great puppet technique, you can only refine puppets without consciousness. No matter how powerful this puppet is, it can't be more powerful than its original body. However, the puppet raising technique is different. It completely purifies the soul in the creature's body and makes ownerless souls appear in the creature's mind. In the end, as long as you want, you can develop the puppet in any direction you want. Some people even raise this kind of puppet, possess it, and directly refine it into an external incarnation." "Huh!" Han Fei exclaimed. "External incarnation?" The old turtle said, "Of course. When you raise this kind of puppet to a certain extent, it will already have consciousness. Even if their masters wanted to possess them, they would still resist. Because at that time, it will be equivalent to an independent creature." Seeing that Han Fei was lost in thought, the old turtle couldn't help but chuckle. Some people do this dirty thing because they are not strong enough. They would specifically look for people with outstanding talent, kill them before they could grow up, and slowly nurture their corpses. In the end, I'll be able to replace him, and it'll be enough to raise my level of existence to a whole new level. Han Fei twitched the corner of his mouth. "You're really shameless," the old turtle said disdainfully. "That's nothing. If it weren't for the fact that the conditions for raising a puppet are very harsh and the chances of raising a powerful puppet are very small, this technique would have long been popular in the world. Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth. It sounds awesome, but forget it. Even the old turtle, who always bragged, said it was difficult. It must not be simple. As for the puppet under the steps into the sea? Forget it, I'd better wait until I become stronger. Immediately, Han Fei began to observe the great puppet technique. Even if this Yuandao was useless to the old turtle, it was at least half a venerable. If it was refined into a puppet, he would really be invincible among the explorers. Chapter 1252. 3 days later. Deep in the sea, in a trench, there was a black tortoise shell that covered a small half of the trench. At this moment, in the trench, spiritual fire was raging. Not only was Han Fei refining puppets, but he was also doing it in a different way. When he refined Overlord, it was just an idea from Mu Jia. This time, he imagined what would happen if he engraved arrays on Yuandao's body in the form of a tattoo. The old turtle, in the body of Gui Sanqing, stood not far away with his hands behind his back and nodded slightly. I didn't expect you to be so good at arrays at such a young age. Although this array can't give Yuandao the combat power of a venerable, it can increase his strength by another 20%. Han Fei grinned. I can also engrave arrays on your tortoise shell. Do you want me to engrave them for you? The old turtle said disdainfully. You don't know that the tortoise shell is an array, a kind of heaven-bestowed array. This array can prevent vitality from leaking, resist all kinds of techniques, and bear the weight of the sky. How can a few arrays you engrave be comparable to it? Han Fei frowned. Is there such a saying? He said disdainfully. Then according to what you said, doesn't it mean that all creatures with shells are born with arrays? The old turtle said leisurely. This statement is not wrong. For example, do you think the shell on a crab is not an array? Every kind of creature in this world is unique. Their shells have a myriad of functions, and they grow like this after countless years of accumulation. Who knows if there are arrays among them? Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei, who was engraving arrays, was taken aback. What the old turtle said made sense. He couldn't help but think of the nautilus that Li Luoluo dug out in the ideal palace, which had beautiful golden lines. About an hour later, a brand new Yuandao appeared. However, the Yuandao who pretended to be calm was gone. Instead, it was a bald big shot with tattoos all over his body. Even his forehead had been engraved with array lines. The old turtle said, You pay too much attention to balance. There are too many defensive arrays and spirit-gathering arrays, but there are too few speed arrays. However, this concealment formation is still passable. Of course, it's ineffective against supremacies, but it's still effective against Dao seekers. Han Fei said lightly, A puppet needs to be well-rounded. How can I count on it to deal with a semi-venerable? Once I lose my ability to think, even if I split a strand of my spirit, I won't be able to react fast enough compared to a half-venerable. Therefore, the purpose of his existence is only to deal with living beings below the peak of the Dao-seeking stage. Buzz, buzz, suddenly, the top of Han Fei's head shook, and the shadow of the black shell began to fade. The old turtle said, The turtle shell heaven sealing technique has a limited time. Someone will find this place soon, right? As an emperor-level powerhouse, he certainly knew about the existence of the venerable token. Now it was up to Han Fei to explain it. Han Fei said, Don't mind it. Han Fei took out the venerable token and activated it. Immediately, a voice echoed in Han Fei's head, Stay where you are. Another 2 hours passed. Han Fei was puzzled. Why are you so slow? The old turtle said, It's not that I'm slow, but it takes me a long time to get here without being noticed. Sure enough, after waiting for about half an hour, Han Fei suddenly found that in the trench, a large number of rattan grasses appeared, and as the number of rattan grasses soared, a red flower bud grew out. When the flower bud bloomed, Han Fei saw Jing walking out of it. Jing naturally looked at the old turtle. After all, at her level, she certainly knew that the old turtle was not a puppet but a real sea demon. Jing didn't pay much attention to him. The old turtle seemed to have known that she was coming. So she frowned slightly. Why did I come to this damn place? It's not close to the Shuemu heaven at all. After complaining slightly, Jing looked at the old turtle and asked, "Who is this?" Han Fei said, "This is Gui Sanqing. He has been persuaded by me and now works for me." The old turtle rolled his eyes and put his hands behind his back, looking calm. "I work for you? If it weren't for you, would I have fallen to this point?" Jing thought that Han Fei's identity was different, so she didn't think too much. With a push of her hand, a soundproof array appeared, blocking the old turtle outside. The first thing Jing said was, "Tell me first, who is my junior sister?" Han Fei blinked and said, "Don't you know?" Looking at Jing's curious little eyes, Han Fei knew that something must have happened. He said leisurely, "Well, I can't say." Jing took a deep look at Han Fei. "Really? Her Majesty also said that I can't say." "What are you talking about? You've only met Her Majesty once, and I've heard everything that you've said." Han Fei smiled faintly. "That's a secret. But I think you will know in the near future." Jing hummed for a few seconds before she gave up asking. Then she became serious. "It turns out that you can really turn into a sea demon. Even I didn't see how you did it. You didn't cultivate some special technique to become a sea demon, did you? Can you change back?" Han Fei grinned and his body quickly changed. The art of deception changed his realm and strength. At this moment, Han Fei became a beginner-level sea spirit half-mermaid. "Can you see it?" Jing frowned. "It seems. I can't. This technique has hidden your true strength for 10,000 years. Han Fei smiled. "Not enough. My appearance, strength, and aura can all be changed, but my law enforcer ability and combat skills can't be changed. Combat skills are easy to solve, but the key is my law enforcer ability. This Fish Dragon King has the law proximity technique." As he spoke, Han Fei looked at Jing with a smile, which made Jing teeth clench slightly. Jing glared at Han Fei. "So, you want my law proximity technique? But it does require the ability to comprehend space." Han Fei frowned. "Must I law enforcer?" In his heart, the old turtle's voice said, "Not necessarily. As long as this little girl is willing, I can still teach her." Han Fei said, "Can you do it too?" The old turtle said, "Of course I can. But I can't teach you. When you reach the king level, it will be hard for you not to know it. Because space is there. As a king, you can see through this relatively shallow power at a glance." Han Fei asked, "Then why didn't you tell me earlier?" The old turtle said, "If you want to go to the royal city, of course I will tell you. Otherwise, you will be exposed. But are you sure you want to go to the royal city with your current strength? You should know that there are kings there. Once you're exposed, both of us will be finished." Han Fei immediately understood what the old turtle meant. The reason why he didn't tell him before was probably because he was worried about this. However, he was not a fool. Even if he really went to such a dangerous place, he had to make sure that nothing would go wrong. Jing grumbled, "You're lucky." "What else?" Her Majesty asked where you will be in the future and how to contact you. Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth and said, "Don't worry about me for a while. I'm going to find a place. Did the Queen give you any hints?" Jing asked suspiciously again, "I really wonder if you have secretly met Her Majesty." With that, Jing threw a fish skin map to Han Fei and said, "Her Majesty gave this to you. It's all the dangerous places in the Shuemu heaven. You know how precious this sea map is, right? Her Majesty said that if she gave you this map, you would owe her 100 Tao-seeking state powerhouses and 10 venerables." Puff. Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim, "Is this a robbery?" Han Fei was dumbfounded. "I'm just AF** King Junior Explorer. Is it easy for me? Seeing that Han Fei was dumbfounded, Jing snorted and said, Don't take it for granted. Do you know how long it took Her Majesty to draw this map? Her Majesty has been drawing this map for tens of thousands of years. Jing said excitedly, Her Majesty is so difficult. She can't go to sea and is constrained by the two royal cities. Do you know how the secret places, dangerous places, and forbidden areas on this map came about? They were all discovered by people. For this, more than 10 venerables died in the Shuemu heaven. Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Has the Life Queen been looking for water fairies for tens of thousands of years? He immediately opened the sea map and took a look. In an instant, a vast map of the sea appeared. Han Fei's pupils suddenly constricted. This composition was drawn to the boundary of the Shuemu heaven? The words 2 million kilometers were clearly written on it. That was the distance that the Shuemu heaven extended in the north and south directions, and there were thousands of marked points along the way. Needless to say, every point here was probably a secret realm, and this was only a small part of the sea. And from the perspective of a king, there might be many ordinary secret realms that they might not necessarily go to. Diagonally 2 million kilometers away, the words chaotic ocean were written there. Han Fei couldn't help but look at Jing. Jing, what is the chaotic ocean? Jing said, I knew you would ask. The so-called chaotic ocean can also be regarded as the chaotic sea or the wall of death, a manifestation of the boundless sea. It's just that its range is not very large, usually hundreds of thousands of kilometers. It's said that it was created by the kings to separate the 36 heavens. Even venerables are very likely to die in it. Han Fei said in surprise, Why did they create this? Isn't it good for the two sides to be connected? Jing looked at Han Fei as if he were an idiot. Are you stupid? Different immortal palaces have different ways of defending against enemies. If they are connected, will the Sea Demon Royal City also be connected? By then, it will be disrupted. What if multiple royal cities join forces and sneak attack a region? Han Fei's face tightened. That's true. The only thing was, they actually used the methods of various kings to open up a place where even a venerable one might die. Just how dangerous was that place? Was the boundless sea so dangerous? As if seeing through Han Fei's thoughts, Jing said, In a sense, the chaotic ocean is more dangerous than the boundless sea. The boundless sea is big and far, but the chaotic ocean is short and dangerous. It's different. Third update. Please vote. It's the college entrance examination, the road is closed. I'm home today. I wish you all the best. End of this chapter. Chapter 1253. Han Fei finally understood why the Shuemu heaven was next to the Yinyang heaven, but no one could come here. Therefore, the boundless sea that he and almost everyone in the Yinyang heaven thought was actually not the real boundless sea, but a sea area that was opened up by a strong master to block the 36 heavens. Although he was a little surprised, just who had the ability to seal up an area that was tens of millions of miles long. But what could he say if someone sealed it up for him? However, Han Fei still asked curiously, What about the sky? Can it fly? Jing said, You have so many questions. I don't know. I've never been there. Her Majesty said that the wall of death is horrible. Who dares to go there? Han Fei continued to observe the map and asked, Have you ever been to the red spots here? Han Fei found that the area of this sea map was too large, but in fact, there weren't many marked points in it. Just like when he went to the Level 3 fishery, there were thousands of marks of secret realms on Old Bai's sea map. However, the ones that were really worth exploring could only be counted as a fraction. In fact, there were only about 30,000 marked points in the vast area of the Shuemu Heavenly Sea map. And these points were divided into 3 colors. The ones near the Cloud Sea Divine Tree were mainly green, which covered an area of about 500,000 kilometers. As for the rest, there were red and black. Among them, red was the majority, accounting for almost 90%. Only the remaining 10% were black. But even so, the black spots were as large as 2,000. However, among these 2,000 black spots, 80% of them had a green mark. Jing said, "The green marks indicate that they have been explored, and the red marks indicate that there are secret realms in this place, but it's impossible to verify whether these places have been explored by sea demons or not. However, the value of the red-marked locations shouldn't be too high. Most of them are at the sea spirit realm, and there might be some explorers, but there shouldn't be too many." Han Fei's eyes flickered. "So, black is the highest level?" Jing said, "Black is the most dangerous. Similarly, among these black marks, the green marks are all places that have been explored by our Shuemu heaven. As for the rest, we just know, but haven't had time to explore. Among them, there must be a lot of undiscovered secret realms around the Blood Sea Divine Wood City and the Baibei Royal City." Han Fei was speechless. "Hiss. So, what do you mean? Shall I go to Ong?" Han Fei looked at the remaining 400 black secret realms, which were mainly distributed in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City in the west and the Baibei Royal City in the east. These two cities had one thing in common. They were very close to the chaotic Azure Sea. According to the standard on the map, the distance was probably only 500,000 to 600,000 kilometers. What did that mean? It was roughly the distance from the Ice God Gorge to the Ice God Gorge. In fact, this distance wasn't far, so the Ice God Gorge was listed as the frontline battlefield. In other words, if he wanted to get to the Baibei Royal City, he would have to cross a sea region of about 5 million kilometers to get there based on the location of the Divine Tree. On the way, Han Fei saw the unexplored black spots on the way from the Cloud Sea Divine Tree to the White Shell City. Han Fei counted 101 black spots within 1,000,000 kilometers on both sides of the straight line. Of course, Han Fei counted the black spots and didn't count the red spots, because there were too many of them. Han Fei used to think that secret realms were equivalent to treasures. If there were such a map in the Inyang heaven, he would probably explore them one by one with the others. Unfortunately, Han Fei didn't have the time. Even if he explored one secret realm a day, it seemed that he wouldn't be able to explore all of them. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. His junior sister king had given him a super big problem. With the time that the Life Queen had spent in the Shuemu heaven, it was reasonable for her to find someone. Since she couldn't find him early, it was very likely that the water fairy's hiding place was somewhere in the two royal cities. Han Fei felt his blood freeze. So, not only did he have to go to the royal cities, but he also had to investigate the special secret realms in the royal cities. He might even have to find a way to sneak into the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. However, just when Han Fei thought of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, he heard Jing blinking her eyes and saying, "Since you've become a sea demon, can you become a woman?" Han Fei said with a black face, "No, I can't. Don't even think about it." "Huh. It seems that you have this ability?" Han Fei shook his head like a rattle. "I didn't. Don't slander me. I can't become a blood demon, nor can I become a Millennium Snapper." Jing said in surprise, "You know what I want to say. Sure enough, you must have met the Queen secretly." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "You're too dramatic. Can Her Majesty come to see me?" Seeing that Jing was still staring at him, Han Fei waved his hand and said, "I can't become a woman, not in this life. I'm a male even if I become a fox. Forget it. I feel a lot of pressure now and the work intensity is a bit high." Seeing that Han Fei was starting to talk nonsense, Jing was speechless. Jing said, "Okay, although I don't know what kind of tacit understanding you and Her Majesty have reached. But this time, Her Majesty has really paid a lot. This time, she can only give you 3 drops of the Spring of Life, which is already the limit. She can't give you any more." Han Fei's expression changed slightly. As far as he knew, in the past few days, the Life Queen had given him 43 drops of the Spring of Life. That was the 100-year reserve of a pioneer sea-state powerhouse, and she gave it to him all at once. Although nominally, he owed a lot of people, it was enough to show that the Life Queen had really paid a great price. Han Fei could guess that every time the ancient realm of the 1,000-year mountain opened, someone would probably go in with the Spring of Life. And there wouldn't be a lot of the Spring of Life. It should only be enough for the Water Fairy to live. Because the Water Fairy also made it clear that she wanted to give up her path and recultivate, which meant she had to give up her body. She would have to start from the beginning and rise from the spirit awakening state step by step. Of course, these were all Han Fei's own guesses. He had never recultivated, so he had no experience. Jing stretched out her hand, and the 3 drops of the Spring of Life exuded such strong vitality that he really wanted to swallow them. As long as Han Fei swallowed a drop now, he could immediately replenish his vitality and return to his peak state. However, this was not the time to use the Spring of Life. Han Fei waved his hand, put away the Spring of Life, and then said, "Close distance technique." Jing pouted, sighed, and put a jade slip into Han Fei's hand. "You people from the Yinyang heaven are really good at making trouble. You've only been in the Shuemu heaven for a few days, and it's already a mess. The Ice Sea realm, the Flame Sea, and the Dark War port are all yours." Han Fei couldn't help but say, "The human race has one more." Jing said, "Yu Chen is about to enter the Tao. He will enter the Tao regardless of whether you come or not. And it won't cause such a large-scale battle." Han Fei said with a smile, "Come on, it's good to have some changes. If there are no changes, it's so lifeless. You've almost forgotten your ambition." With that said, Han Fei said, "Okay. Do me a favor while you're at it." Jing couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. "What do you need?" With a flash between Han Fei's eyebrows, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, Little Fatty, and Little Gold were thrown out. Jing was slightly surprised. "You have 3 contractual spiritual beasts?" Han Fei didn't care. "What's so surprising about that? I'm not a special case." With that said, Han Fei stepped on the 9-tailed mantis shrimp's melon seeds and said, "Help me throw it to the whole sea to practice." Then Han Fei pointed to Little Fatty and said, "The dark water of the Dark War port is very suitable for this guy." Then Han Fei patted Little Gold's big head. "I don't know where to throw this guy. Help me throw it to the Sky Clan to practice." Little Fatty glanced at Han Fei. "Where are you going?" Jing couldn't help but be curious. This big octopus looked so strange and spoke so coldly to his master. Han Fei said disdainfully, "I don't need you. You're too weak now." Little Fatty couldn't help but say, "Are you sure? If you don't take me, I'm afraid you'll get yourself killed." Han Fei immediately said angrily, "What are you talking about? Do you think I'll get myself killed? Your master is a king. Forget it, you'd better come with me." Han Fei thought for a moment. It seemed that his trip was indeed very dangerous. If he went to the White Shell Royal City, he would be moving under the nose of a king, and he would feel uneasy without Little Fatty. Immediately, the center of Han Fei's eyebrows flashed again, and the dog came out. "Meow meow bm." Han Fei kicked it with his foot and pointed at the dog's nose. "Meow at me one more time and I'll sterilize you." Swoosh. The dog jumped far away. "What's wrong? Is my master in a bad mood today?" Seeing the dog's cowardice, Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. "Then you can take this guy with you. You can throw him anywhere." Jing exclaimed, "How come there is a 4th contractual spiritual beast? Is this beast?" Han Fei's lips twitched. Looking at the dog hiding next to the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, he said exasperatedly, "Sort of. I don't have time to raise them." In the end, Han Fei took out a sun moon shell. "I'm a free-range pet. There are millions of kilograms of spirit awakening fluid here. Can you ask anyone to give them a sip or something?" "Master, I can keep it for you." The dog spoke, staring at the sun moon shell in Han Fei's hand. Han Fei said, "Shut up. Every contractual spiritual beast needs to grow. It's up to you how far you can go. If I find out that any of you are lazy, unwilling to go to sea, or refuse to fight, when I come back, I will train you personally." Qilu, the nine-tailed mantis shrimp, and the dog both jumped behind Jing Er. They could feel Jing Er's strength. In his heart, he thought that this person was an expert after all, so his master probably wouldn't kick him again. The dog sniffed. This person smelled so good. Lick, lick. Jing Er had never been licked by a dog. When she saw the big tongue rubbing on her leg, she kicked the dog into the bottom of the sea. Bam! The bottom of the sea was dirty, and a big pit was kicked out. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp was so scared that he hurriedly fled. "Why is this thing even fiercer than my master?" Han Fei covered his face. "How the hell did I end up with such a thing?" Jing Er said, "Okay. Although you have a lot of contractual spiritual beasts, your strength is too weak. Your quality is good, but you need experience. Without experience, contractual spiritual beasts can never really grow up. Are you okay? If not, I'm leaving." Han Fei nodded solemnly. "Okay." Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1254. When the red flower buds bloomed, Jing Er left with the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and the others. Simp Dog and nine-tailed mantis shrimp inexplicably became comrades. They seemed to think it was good to leave their master, but Little Gold was quite reluctant to leave Han Fei. Han Fei was a little reluctant, but he knew that this was just a legend. Since his identity was there, he had to act like a legend. Just look at Punishing Saber and the others. They were all first-class powerhouses. Although Han Fei had never fought with them, he had seen Punishing Saber and Water Luster work together. The two of them were only peak-level law enforcers, but they could kill an explorer who had just reached the intermediate level. How terrifying was their strength! If the four of them fought together, Han Fei felt that he wouldn't be able to defeat them. With a thought from Han Fei, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared. Punishing Saber and the other four appeared, or rather, they should be called human beings. A knife, a ball of fire, a pangolin, a tree man, and an ice bird. Han Fei thought for a while, and threw out 2 sun-moon shells. "The spirit awakening fluid should be useless to you. Here are 1,000,000 caddies of spiritual spring. Throw them into the painting. I'll give you 5,000 spiritual fruit. You can share them equally. I only have 2,000 left." The fire seed said, "Master, we can fight for you. Now Master's strength has reached the realm of explorer. We are also explorers. In fact, we can already appear. Anyway, we can absorb spiritual energy and energy on our own. It's not a big problem." Han Fei said, "Not for the time being. I'm in a mess now. I won't call you out unless it's absolutely necessary. I'll give you some resources from time to help you grow. Or, under some special circumstances, I'll also call you out to gain experience, but you can't appear all the time." The tree spirit nodded. "As you wish, Master." Punishing Saber and the others were taken back into the sea-quelling painting. Han Fei knew that the tree spirit and the others were his trump cards. The combat power of the 5 of them added up would definitely not be weak. They might not be a match for peak-level Dao-seeking creatures, but if the 5 of them joined forces, they might not necessarily be a match for the 5 of them. Besides, he had to tread on thin ice and be careful in the sea monster's backyard. Otherwise, with him and the old turtle, the 7 Dao-seeking creatures traveling together, it would be hard for them not to notice. The old turtle, who had witnessed the whole process, was actually quite shocked. He couldn't imagine how lucky Han Fei was to get so many precious followers in such a desolate place. Forget about the 2 sea-quelling bizarre treasures. He had never seen a drop of infinity water. After all, he was not omniscient and omnipotent. However, the drop of water seemed to be able to do everything, and its practicality was even better than that of ordinary sea-quelling bizarre treasures. Even a special creature like the 9-death soul-splitting octopus could recognize him as its master. This was not counting the other three, which should all be legendary creatures. Moreover, although he had seen Punishing Saber and the others come out many times, there would always be a second time when all of them came out at the same time. The first time was during the tribulation, and from their conversation, the old turtle discovered that Han Fei probably had another sea-quelling bizarre treasure, a space weapon that could block a space and allow living creatures to survive. He have Infinity Super Spirit Dragon King with star. But it doesn't look like a storage space. Anyway, the old turtle was sure that Han Fei had at least one sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Not only was the old turtle speechless, but Han Fei actually had 4 sea-quelling bizarre treasure-level weapons when he had just become an explorer. Damn it! He was really shocked. Besides, these were not the most powerful ones. The most powerful thing Han Fei had was the little calabash, which was at least a divine weapon. At this moment, the old turtle felt exhausted. His luck was really good. Even when he was in the same realm, compared with Han Fei, he could only be regarded as a poor person. However, it was exactly because of this. The old turtle was lost in thought. Han Fei had so many fortuitous encounters in this damn place. Wouldn't it be amazing if he went to a bigger world? After arranging everything, Han Fei gave most of his resources to the Punishing Saber and the others. After all, they were equivalent to 5 explorers. If he gave them too few resources, they wouldn't be enough. But he only kept a small part of his resources, which should be enough. Now, as the old turtle said, most of the resources were useless to him. What he needed were rarer, more advanced resources that could improve his strength. Han Fei looked back at the old turtle. Old Yuan, you are the only one who knows all my secrets. Swear that you, the primitive emperor, will not reveal any of my secrets, either by mouth or on paper. The old turtle's face darkened. Do you want to be my opponent? With a thought from Han Fei, Yuandao, who had been refined into a puppet, appeared and stared at the old turtle. Han Fei said, Old Yuan, we've known each other for a long time. There is still a long way to go in the future. Now part of your soul is free. Don't let such a trifle cause a rift between us. The old turtle was dumbfounded. He knew that Han Fei was extremely selfish. I taught you so much and gave you so many resources, but now you're suspecting me. The old turtle looked at Yuandao and asked. Of course, he knew that a puppet was nothing. But the problem was that Han Fei had too many trump cards. For example, the 5 guys just now were the real 5 legendary creatures. Their strength couldn't be underestimated when they cooperated with each other. Not to mention, there was also Han Fei, the biggest freak. If he didn't obey, most of his soul wouldn't have a chance to get out. Even if this body could escape, it would definitely be seriously injured. At that time, he would have to spend hundreds of years to become a king. Helpless, the old turtle sighed. You're really ruthless. Han Fei grinned. Hey! I, Han Fei, am approachable, serve the people, and do good deeds without leaving my name. Those who know me all praise me. The old turtle. Seeing the old turtle swear to the Tao, Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief, put away Yuandao, and said with a smile, That's right. From now on, if we combine our swords, it shouldn't be a problem for us to dominate the Baibei royal city. The old turtle shook his head slightly. Okay, Yuandao is dead, but he went out to cultivate. So, no one will find out if he doesn't come back in a year. Although you said you would come out to cultivate, you're an influential figure in this trip to the 1,000-mountain ancient realm. People will definitely pay attention to you. You have to show up. Han Fei nodded. Don't worry. I still have to go back to the Ice God Gorge. Huh. The old turtle couldn't help but ask in surprise, Why are you going back to the Ice God Gorge as a sea monster? Han Fei grinned. The dragon chi in my body is boiling, and I urgently need the soul-freezing power of the Ice God Gorge to suppress my blood chi. The old turtle, Ice God Gorge. At this moment, the seahorse Venerable was asking you Kaling and Lon Kair. The fish dragon king wasn't here, so he could only ask them. As for the others, they didn't know anything at all. They didn't even know what had happened. The Seahorse Venerable said, "You two are the Fish Dragon King's subordinates. Why didn't you go with him and leave the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm? Apart from the beginning, you don't know anything about what happened in the Ancient Realm. How can you be his subordinates?" Lan Shui lowered her head. Yu Kailing pursed her lips. "Venerable, the Dragon King only brought Lord Sanqing with him when he came back. He left in a hurry and didn't inform us at all." The Seahorse Venerable squinted and said, "Yu Kailing, you've been to the royal city once. Tell me, what do you think about what happened in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm? The Fish Dragon King went on a killing spree in the end. It's said that he killed more than 100 people many times. Is that true?" Yu Kailing said, "Venerable, we don't know that either, but we heard it from the Blood Demon. But at the exit of the Ancient Realm, Dragon King, I still remember the scene of one person stopping more than 500 people." The Seahorse Venerable pondered for a long time. The Fish Dragon King could do that? 1 against 500? Are you sure you're not bragging? He had been through the peak of the Sea Spirit Realm. Although he wasn't at the top, he was still a top heavenly talent. But 1 against 500? It was already difficult for him to take on 50 blood demons by himself. The scene of the Ichthyosaur King charging at the 500 blood demons alone didn't seem right. As a matter of fact, he had asked them to retreat first, but in the end, all of them had been King killed halfway. It was strange that the 3 Venerables didn't find him. The Seahorse Venerable shouted in a low voice, "Send someone to search for him. A living person can't disappear without a trace." When Yu Kailing was about to take the order, someone suddenly said, "Venerable, the Fish Dragon King and Gui Sanqing are back. They have passed the Ice Mountain City, and are on their way to the Ice God Gorge." The Seahorse Venerable was taken aback. "Oh? They came back by themselves?" About half a day later, on the way to the Ice God Gorge, Han Fei murmured, "This close-distance technique is interesting. It turns out to be a space-folding technique. How amazing!" The old turtle smiled. "That's nothing. When you become a real king, you can cross 1,000,000 kilometers in one step if you walk the path of space. What's more, if you're good at void teleportation, it's very possible for you to cross the entire sea in the blink of an eye." Han Fei was surprised. "So fast?" The old turtle said disdainfully, "The speed of traveling is different from the speed of actual battle. But it's all about the Great Path. You can't understand it now." Han Fei, second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1255. Han Fei openly returned to the Ice God Gorge. The moment he stepped into the Ice God Gorge, many senses immediately scanned over him. As soon as he entered the gorge, the Seahorse Venerable said to him, "Come to the arena." Of course, Han Fei knew it was the Venerable's voice transmission. As Han Fei swam past, many people were watching him at the entrance of the cave abodes. Most of them were peak stage sea spirit. Most of them weren't qualified to go to the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm because they weren't strong enough. They were just ordinary peak stage sea spirit. However, in private, rumors about Han Fei had spread in the past few days. People even said that he could defeat 1,000 people. Someone said, "Are the experts from the royal city so powerful? I heard he defeated the top talents of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City alone." Someone who saw Han Fei walk out of the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm with fire said seriously, "What do you think? You don't even know what happened at that time. Undead creatures covered the sky and covered the earth. Everyone was running, but the Fish Dragon King didn't want to leave at all. It's said that he even charged into the insect tide." Someone sighed. "Otherwise, he would have become a talent of the royal city. And he's ranked 10th on the prodigy roll. If he's ranked first, we can't even imagine how strong he is." But someone else said, "But he's too ruthless. They're all talents of the royal city, but I heard none of them came out. One of them was killed on the spot in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. Many people's expressions changed. Shut up. Is this something you can discuss? The internal fights between experts will only be more fierce than we think. Under the gazes and discussions of countless people, Han Fei swam directly to the arena with an arrogant expression. He didn't care about anything else. In the arena, Han Fei saw Yu Kailing and Lan Shuer standing respectfully on the side. On the high platform, the Seahorse Venerable looked at the Fish Dragon King and said, "Why is the blood qi in your body moving? Your demonic qi seems to be a bit out of control. Are you going to undergo a tribulation?" Han Fei said, "Sir, the Dragon King had some enlightenment during the trip to the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. Because of the restlessness in his bloodline, he left the team and found a secret realm to stabilize his cultivation for a few days." The Seahorse Venerable looked straight at Han Fei. "Looks like the effect isn't very good. I haven't been able to suppress it for a few days." Han Fei smiled casually. "The Dragon King's bloodline has changed. I feel that the level of my demonic heritage may be improved." The Venerable Seahorse was taken aback. "Oh? Do you mean within the 8th level or the 9th level?" Han Fei curled his lips inadvertently as if he was smiling bitterly. He said, "Level 9 is still too difficult. If I can make a breakthrough this time, I may reach level 8, high quality." The Venerable Seahorse's eyes lit up. "If that's the case, this can be considered a joyous occasion. Since that's the case, why not come back after you've broken through?" Han Fei smiled lightly. "It's mainly to prevent the Venerables from worrying too much. Also, because my blood and qi are in a frenzy, I need to make use of the cold energy of the Ice God Gorge." The Venerable Seahorse nodded. "Then you should be clear about it. By the way, was the blood demon you killed at the end the one who ambushed you?" Han Fei shook his head. "No, it must be someone else. That person's strength is probably on par with mine, or perhaps even more mysterious. Otherwise, I would have killed him long ago." The Venerable Seahorse nodded slightly. "Got it. These two are your subordinate. You can take them away yourself." Han Fei turned his head and glanced at the two of them. His eyes were cold, and the corners of his mouth curled up. "Wait for my return." After that, Han Fei ignored the two of them, turned around, left the arena, and swam directly to the abyss outside the Ice God Gorge. From beginning to end, the old turtle didn't say a word and just followed Han Fei. As soon as Han Fei left the arena, Lan Shuer and Yu Kailing also left. Compared to the Fish Dragon King, the Venerable Seahorse actually valued these two people more. Next to the Venerable Seahorse, another half-mermaid Venerable suddenly appeared and said indifferently, "What do you think?" The Venerable Seahorse said, "After all, the Fish Dragon King is originally from the royal city. Now that his demonic heritage has changed, maybe his ranking will change in the future. Also, the Fish Dragon King must have obtained a lot of opportunities in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm this time. It's not a bad idea to let these two follow him." The half-mermaid Venerable said, "Do you really think the Fish Dragon King is as arrogant and conceited as he looks?" The Venerable Seahorse tilted its head. "What do you mean?" The half-mermaid Venerable said, "I don't know what's going on either. I always feel that under the conceited appearance of the Fish Dragon King, there's a deep heart hidden. Think about it. Yu Hong is dead, Shui Hongyan is dead, and a total of 3 people from the royal city came. The 2 smart ones died, but the conceited Fish Dragon King survived." The Venerable Seahorse frowned slightly. "That's true. But among the 3, the Fish Dragon King is the strongest. Maybe it's as you said, but what does it have to do with us? No matter how talented this guy is, he's not worthy of our attention before he enters the Tao." The half-mermaid Venerable nodded slightly. "Indeed. Not to mention that the Fish Dragon King was only in the top 10 of the prodigy list. Even if he was ranked first, it didn't mean much in the sea spirit realm. The abyssal chasm could also be called a trench. In the ocean, due to the movement of the Earth's crust, trenches were actually very common, but some were deep and some were shallow. And the depth of the Ice God Gorge was not something that ordinary people could explore. Last time, Han Fei dived 10,000 meters as Yuhanjia and was watched by Yu Wendao all the way. This time, Han Fei dived 10,000 meters and descended quickly, with the old turtle following closely behind. The old turtle said, I still can't explore. This body limits me." Han Fei was speechless. "Come on, if you can't perceive it, then you can't perceive it. What's there to brag about? I can't perceive it either. What did I say?" The old turtle. Han Fei indeed couldn't perceive it, but he didn't think it was a bad thing. The abyss that even the old turtle couldn't perceive to the bottom was certainly not something that could be seen by ordinary venerables. This time, when Han Fei and the old turtle dived to about 15,000 meters, the old turtle reminded him, "You need to protect yourself with demonic energy. At this distance people can see you clearly." Han Fei nodded, and the ice crystals on his body suddenly shattered at this moment, and billowing demonic energy lingered around him. At this depth, Han Fei couldn't be naughty anymore, because both his body and soul seemed to have begun to stiffen slightly. In the Ice God Gorge, the three venerables were watching Han Fei, who was diving in the crack at the moment. Among them, the newest venerable turtle said, "He didn't use demonic energy to protect himself until he reached 15,000 meters. This kid is really arrogant. But he is only halfway there. Let's see how much deeper he can go." The seahorse venerable said, "It shouldn't be a problem for him to reach a depth of 25,000 meters. But if he continues to go down, the fish dragon king might die, but Gui Sanqing might not be able to go down." The half-mermaid venerable grinned and said, "This has nothing to do with the realm, but the strength of the soul. After all, Gui Sanqing is just a servant. Even if he is already half a venerable, 30,000 meters should be his limit. That layer of frost mist isn't something that just anyone can walk through." The seahorse venerable said, however, "Didn't this kid say that he wanted to cultivate here? Is he still interested in the secret under the Ice God Gorge?" Below, when Han Fei reached 2,000 meters, he found that his demonic energy couldn't resist the invasion of the cold air. And there seemed to be something in the sea that was stimulating his soul. When he dived to 25,000 meters, Han Fei stopped. He was almost frozen into an ice block. He couldn't help but ignite demonic fire. His blood surged and almost doubled in speed in his body. Han Fei asked, "Old turtle, what the hell is this place? Haven't you sensed anything yet?" The old tortoise had deliberately frozen himself into a block of ice. The old tortoise said, "There is a frosty fog below. This emperor's perception is blocked by that fog. I almost passed through it." Han Fei didn't believe it. "How much do you mean almost?" The old turtle frowned. "If my soul is not damaged and my Tao is not gone, I can see through this place at a glance." Han Fei said impatiently, "Okay, stop bragging. It's not a shame if you can't see through it. It's really King cold here. My blood and chi are almost frozen." The old turtle sneered. "Are you kidding me? With my great Tao as the foundation, your meridians are no longer the meridians of mortals. In addition to the half-success of the golden body, walking directly into the fog won't do you any harm. You're just purely cold now." Han Fei smiled. "But I can't go down directly. How strong is the Fish Dragon King? If he could pass through the mist directly, I'm afraid he would have done this long ago. Let me stay here for a few days." So, looking from above, Han Fei and the old turtle both stopped about 25,000 meters deep in the strait. The old turtle let himself be frozen into a big ice block, and Han Fei's body was smoking, and billowing demonic energy was crazily drawn into his body from all directions. He was practicing the demon god scripture. Before, Han Fei had never seriously practiced the sea demon cultivation method. However, now that he was practicing the sea demon cultivation method, he found that there seemed to be a power slowly improving his physique. The old turtle asked, The sea demon cultivation method you are practicing seems to be quite advanced, right? Han Fei thought to himself, of course, this method is a divine connecting technique, almost like a Tao. Of course, Han Fei didn't bother to explain, so he said casually, I picked it up. The third chapter. I've been thinking about the plot recently. Keep updating and try to make more exciting arrangements in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 1256. Han Fei should have discovered that whether he was a human being or a sea demon, his body was his. So, no matter what form he used, as long as he could still cultivate, his ultimate strength would be synchronized with his body. Therefore, when Han Fei cultivated the demon god scripture, he sucked up a large number of demonic stones and forged the universe in one go. It was very difficult to wash repeatedly in 3 days, but Han Fei's strength improved a little. Of course, this kind of rapid improvement would take time to stabilize in the future. But Han Fei didn't care. He wanted to quickly raise his strength to the peak level explorer level. Then, he could spend a few years slowly grinding it away. In this way, at least he could use more combat power in advance. However, under the nose of the enemy, Han Fei couldn't make any breakthrough. Otherwise, wouldn't he be exposed? If he made another breakthrough, he would have to go through a tribulation. This was something that even a fool would know. Therefore, even if he consumed a large number of demonic stones, Han Fei still didn't reach level 71. As if adapting to this depth, Han Fei suddenly said to the old turtle, I'm going to continue diving down until I reach the top of the mist you mentioned. The old turtle said, Gui Sanqing's body won't go down with you. Gui Sanqing's body and soul are not enough to support him to explore this secret realm. However, this empress can roughly guess that there should be some extremely cold object below. Unless it's a special technique, ordinary people can't afford to use this kind of cold power at all, even venerables. Han Fei thought to himself, I won't use it myself. I don't have such a technique. If it weren't for the reaction of Little Black and Little White, maybe I wouldn't have come to this ice god gorge. Han Fei seemed to take a breath and directly sank more than 5,000 meters in one go. At this time, ice was constantly condensing around him, and then it was constantly broken by Han Fei's surging blood. At this time, Han Fei bared his teeth and seemed to be trembling all over. However, this was actually all an act. No matter whether anyone could see it or not, he didn't need to show off too much. At this time, a deep dragon roar came from his throat. Apart from that, there was also a faint demonic chi dragon shadow surrounding his body. The moment the dragon shadow appeared, the 3 venerables of the ice god gorge couldn't help but cast their gazes over. Is there a change in his Dragon King bloodline? That's right. It's obvious that something strange has happened. It looks like he did come across a fortuitous encounter in the Thousand Mountains ancient realm. Perhaps Yu Hong was actually killed by him as well. Perhaps he's hiding many things from us. Han Fei knew that a venerable's perception had scanned him. However, he did not panic at all. At the end of the day, it seemed possible to disguise the spirit concentration art as the demon concentration art. Of course, this was to prevent the demonic energy dragon shadow that he had deliberately created from being exposed. Han Fei deliberately made an illusion with the void lines and the water vein technique. The Venerable One was not a god, so it was impossible for him to take care of everything. Even the kings, or the characters above the kings, often made mistakes, like when he fooled Chun Huangdian. So what if he was a king? In front of absolute acting skills, everything was useless. Besides, Han Fei was now a sea demon himself. Although he was not the Fish Dragon King, he was a real sea demon. After diving for 30,000 meters, Han Fei finally saw the white smoke that looked like a cloud. This environment reminded Han Fei of the mirror of icy salt that he had been to in the level 3 fishery. After acting for 3 days and improving himself, he was only one step away from breaking through to level 71. Han Fei certainly wouldn't let go of this opportunity. Hey! Next, I'll improve as much as I can. Of course, Han Fei was not in a hurry to cultivate. When he was halfway into the white mist, he really felt extremely cold this time, and even his soul had begun to feel slightly numb. This time, Han Fei really started to light a fire for himself. The demonic energy flames on his body were burning fiercely. Fortunately, he was the one who came down. If it was someone else, he might not have been able to hold on. At the very least, the amount of demonic qi he could store in his body was definitely not enough. Unless that person was a Tao-seeking state demon. But even if it was a Tao-seeking state demon, it still depended on its level. The speed of absorbing demonic energy and spiritual energy from the void was also different from that of a peak-level Tao-seeking state demon. Han Fei didn't care about this. There was still 1 billion points of spiritual energy in Forge the Universe. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't finish it anyway. So, in the white mist, a fiery red area of at least 100 meters appeared. Han Fei was still diving quickly. He had never encountered a deep-sea area with a depth of tens of thousands of meters. The abyssal chasm was still 3,000 meters from the surface of the sea, and he had dived more than 3,000 meters in this cloud. After a rough estimation, it was almost 40,000 meters. At this moment, Han Fei found that in this mist, there were many colorful creatures. In front of Han Fei, there was a huge fish with a body like a horse lantern. Suddenly, it released a terrifying electric current on him. With Han Fei's physique, he certainly wouldn't be afraid of a mere electric current. Han Fei even felt that this electric current was a special kind of cold power, which was trying to attack his soul. However, after staring at it for a long time, Han Fei was quite surprised. If the information hadn't popped up, he wouldn't have known what it was that shocked him. Because that thing was completely transparent. A string of information popped up in his eyes. Name: transparent algae eel. Introduction: a special fish in the deep sea. Its body is as thin as algae and transparent. When it swims, its forehead and the edge of its body will emit colorful light. Transparent algae eels are good at paralyzing electric currents and strangling. Level 69 quality: exotic, mutated. Spiritual energy greater than 59,998 points. Effect: long-term consumption can significantly increase your vitality and improve your physique. Collectible: transparent frontal bone, glowing meridians. Absorbable: remarks. When the transparent algae eel uses strangulation, it will stick close to its prey and kill them with its terrifying strength. For reference: willow leaf eel. When Han Fei saw the message clearly, he already had a bad feeling about it. He felt that he was covered by something like a film when he wasn't paying attention. As for the electric current just now, he didn't feel anything. Heh! A creature that's thinner than seaweed leaves wants to strangle me? With a thought from Han Fei, the infinity water darted out from his body in all directions. After only one attack, the transparent algae eel was riddled with holes. However, the vitality of the transparent algae eel was almost as strong as that of jellyfish. Its body was riddled with holes, but it wasn't slow at all. It seemed to have realized that the enemy was too strong and was trying to slip away. Han Fei grabbed it with his hand and pinched it. Then, Han Fei discovered, to his surprise, that the creature was more than 50 meters long and 8 meters wide. Except for the skull, there was only one glowing meridian left. Chilla! Han Fei cut the transparent algae eel into halves and threw it into Forge the Universe. This thing is really tough, it must be very chewy. After killing the transparent algae eel, Han Fei found a lot of creatures nearby. For example, at this moment, he encountered a group of white prawns that were half a meter long and had only one horn on their head. This kind of prawn was even more peculiar. They looked like a single conical pillar, and their eyes were on the big thorn. As for the large thorn, it pierced from the forehead to the tail, like a truck carrying a missile on its back. This kind of prawn was good at stabbing. Name Thorny Blood Prawn Introduction. Deep Sea Thorny Prawn Level 68 Quality, Rare Spiritual Energy greater than 9,583 points. Effect, long-term consumption can increase ice resistance. Collectible Thorny Spear Absorbable Swish. 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 Han Fei saw water ripples in front of him, and many thorns stabbed at him. Because there were so many of them, Han Fei didn't bother to attack them one by one. Ho! A roar burst out like a dragon's roar. As Han Fei roared, at least hundreds of thorny blood prawns in front of him were shocked to death. In comparison, they were just rare creatures. Even if Han Fei stood still, they wouldn't be able to stab him, let alone hurt him. In Forge the Universe, the real Fish Dragon King, who had long been dying, was dumbfounded when he saw Yuandao also come in. At least he was still alive, but Yuandao seemed to have become a statue. He was trapped in the array by Han Fei, watching Han Fei throw things into this vast space every day or take things from here. When the Fish Dragon King saw Han Fei's spiritual spring, it was tens of thousands of kilograms or even millions of kilograms. It didn't want to live at all. It was a huge blow to it. In the past few days, he had seen strange marine creatures being thrown in one after another. Sometimes it was a turtle, sometimes a big fish, sometimes a big snail, sea cucumber, sea urchin, crab, lobster. In short, there were many kinds of them. Now, a transparent thing was thrown in for no reason, as well as hundreds of strange prawns. He knew this kind of prawn. This was the unique thorny blood prawn of the Ice God Gorge. In other words, Han Fei was now in the Ice God Gorge. The Fish Dragon King roared, "Han Fei, let me out, Han Fei BM?" Han Fei's voice reverberated in the air, "Shut up, Buzz. You're almost as loud as those bugs. If you yell again, I'll chop you up." The Fish Dragon King said, "I know you are in the Ice God Gorge. You are exploring the secrets of the Ice God Gorge. I know the secrets of this place. I can trade with you." In the outside world, Han Fei curled his lips and said contemptuously, "The secrets of the Ice God Gorge are not enough. If you want to survive, you can trade the secrets of the royal city." The information reading of the void lines was not omnipotent. It couldn't read all the memories. Han Fei could only read most of the relatively shallow memories. Many deep memories were usually hidden by the brain because they were considered very important. Of course, no matter what the Fish Dragon King said, Han Fei would never let him go. Chapter 1257. Seeing Han Fei's indifferent attitude, the Fish Dragon King immediately roared, "Han Fei, you're despicable and shameless. Fight me fair and square if you dare." Han Fei said leisurely, "You either tell me the secret of the Ice God Gorge or shut up. Otherwise, I don't mind killing you now." The Fish Dragon King laughed. "Han Fei, you dare not kill me. My life tablet can't be broken. Once my life tablet is broken, you can no longer pretend to be me." Swish. Yuandao stepped in front of the Fish Dragon King. However, Yuandao said, "I don't have to pretend to be you. But, Fish Dragon King, you have never been my opponent. Your life is dispensable to me. However, if you can help me do one thing in the future, not only will I let you go, but I will also repair your injuries and you may return to your peak again." The Fish Dragon King shivered. "Yuandao? That's it? I've become a puppet?" However, the Fish Dragon King suddenly perked up. "Is there a chance that I won't die?" For such a heavenly talent, he knew very well how strong he was and how strong others were. Maybe he was no match for Han Fei, but not everyone was like Han Fei. Han Fei had completely subverted his understanding of the world. This was a ruthless and ferocious person. Not only that, this person was extremely dangerous. He could sneak into the Ice God Gorge just by imitating him. To be able to hide it from Gui Sanqing, this was a remarkable thing. Being defeated by a person like Han Fei might become his inner demon, but this inner demon would not be an obstacle to him. The Fish Dragon King said, "Tell me, what's the matter?" Yuandao put on a smile. "That's simple. In the future, I will go to the royal city. At that time, I will naturally meet all kinds of people. You need to help me recognize them." The Fish Dragon King said in surprise. "So simple?" Han Fei sneered. "What are you thinking? What's the big deal? This is just the basis of our cooperation. There are some things that I didn't know until I got your royal city." The Fish Dragon King looked complicated. "You want me to help you deal with the royal city? That's impossible. No matter how strong you are, you have just passed the tribulation. You can't deal with the royal city." "TSK. Who told you that I'm going to attack the White Shell capital city?" The Ichthyosaur King was confused. "Then what are you going to do?" "I'm looking for a secret realm. As long as we find this mystic realm, it doesn't matter if I kill you or not." The Fish Dragon King asked, "What if we can't find it?" Can't find it? You can pray I don't find it. However, if I can't find you in Baibei Royal City, it will be time for you to be of use. So, don't worry, you still have value. So tell me the secret of the Ice God Gorge first." Han Fei said, "Fish Dragon King, only when a person is useful can he have a chance to live. The premise is that you have to always let me see your value. You are a proud son of heaven. Even if you do not have the potential to become a king, you have the potential to enter the Tao. You must not make a mistake. Say it." Han Fei's voice seemed to be bewitching, which stunned the Fish Dragon King. Hearing what Han Fei said, a glimmer of hope was ignited in the Fish Dragon King's heart. It couldn't be helped. In boundless despair, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, it would become a life-saving straw. Therefore, the Fish Dragon King quickly made a decision. He knew very well that no matter where it was a place where the strong preyed on the weak. Only survival was the only truth. Immediately, the Fish Dragon King said, "I'll say it." When the Fish Dragon King said these two words, the old turtle's voice buzzed. "Son of AB*TCH, this kid has no backbone at all. He will never enter the Tao in this life." Han Fei said with a smile, "I don't care if he can enter the Tao or not. I didn't lie to him. Maybe I can really restore him." The old turtle sneered. "You just don't want to go to the Blood Sea Divine Wood City." Han Fei grinned. "Smart." In Forge the Universe, the Fish Dragon King said, "The secret under the Ice God Gorge is not undiscovered, but no one can use it." "Oh? Why do you say so?" Han Fei also felt that the sea demons had already made their nests in the Ice God Gorge, and there were venerables guarding it all year round. If there were really great benefits under the Ice God Gorge, even if the venerables couldn't use it, the kings could, right? After all, there were kings in the Baibei Royal City. However, the Ice God Gorge was still the Ice God Gorge. It seemed that except for the great demons above the Tao-seeking state, basically no one knew what was under the Ice God Gorge. Even the Tao-seeking state was useless. At least, Gui Sanqing, who was possessed by the old turtle, couldn't come down at this moment. The Fish Dragon King said, "There is a kind of power under the Ice God Gorge, a kind of power of extreme een and extreme cold. It is said that all those who covet this power are frozen to pieces, without exception. There was once a venerable who cultivated the Tao of extreme cold, but when she tried to subdue this power of extreme cold, half of her body was broken. It took her 100 years to recover." Suddenly, the old turtle exclaimed, "If that's the case, it's interesting. There is indeed such a power of extreme cold in this world. This is a natural spiritual treasure. Oh no, to be precise, it should be a kind of peerless treasure. In the end, it was abandoned here, and no one cares about it?" Han Fei said quickly, "Peerless treasures? What do you mean?" However, he heard the old turtle say, "In this world, apart from the great Tao, there are countless treasures of heaven and earth. There is nothing you can't think of that you can't find in this world. If it was really as the Ichthyosaur King had described, and there really was such a precious material below. In that case, the only possibility was that the kings didn't know what they had encountered at all. That's why they allowed this thing to be stored in this place. They weren't afraid that it would be robbed. Han Fei gasped. Is it really so precious? The old turtle snorted. Why would I lie to you? How big is the world you've only seen? Do you know how big the outside world is? I've already said that the area you're in is very barren. You should be happy that you've come across such a rare treasure. Oh, that's not right, you brats shouldn't be able to collect it either. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, what kind of person can collect such things? The old turtle couldn't help but say, first of all, if it's a rare treasure material, not even a venerable one can touch it. It's at least as precious as a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. However, since the king knows about this thing and still left it here, maybe… Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Maybe he can't pick it up either? The old turtle, Han Fei was stunned. Damn it. If I can't even pick it up, why should I go down there? The old turtle sneered. Can't you see it if you can't pick it up? Why wouldn't you? You have my great Tao as your meridians. Are you afraid of this little bit of coldness? Han Fei was speechless. Hey. Stop saying that this is your great Tao. Now it is my meridians. In Forge the Universe, the Ichthyosaur King said, Han Fei, I saved your life. If you are still a heavenly talent, give me a promise. Yuan Dao was silent for a moment and said, your so-called secret is meaningless to me. If it's really so dangerous, you definitely won't tell me. Otherwise, if I die, you can drag me down with you. However, you told me, which means that you know I won't be fooled and I won't take that power directly. Hee. Do you think you saved my life by telling me about the southeast? Did you get hit in the head by an ironhead fish? The Ichthyosaur King. Han Fei said lazily, just be quiet. Next time, don't try to play this little trick on me. Suddenly, the old turtle said, boy, is your soul-manipulating technique incomplete? Han Fei was confused. What do you mean? The old turtle said, you said you know the soul-manipulating technique, but the soul-manipulating technique can read memories. Why did you make a deal with him? Why didn't you just look at him? Or were you testing him? If he lied, you would kill him? Han Fei was stunned for a moment. He had never thought so much. The soul-manipulating technique was memory reading? Wasn't my void lines also memory reading? Han Fei said, isn't memory reading just part of the memory? The old turtle laughed. Are you kidding me? You can read all its memories with the soul-manipulating technique, but the side effects may be a bit big. Han Fei was shocked. What? The soul-manipulating technique was different from the void lines memories? Han Fei couldn't help but take a breath. Wasn't it a bit exaggerated to read all its memories? But Han Fei keenly grasped one thing, which was that the side effects of this technique were a bit big. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, tell me what the side effects are first. The old turtle said, it seems that what you have mastered is not the soul-manipulating technique, but a kind of memory-peeping technique. I thought you had mastered the soul-manipulating technique. Mocking Han Fei, the old turtle said, in fact, it's not too bad. There are not many side effects. If the target is stronger than the soul manipulator, it will easily backfire, so you can't perform the soul manipulating on the target whose realm is higher than yours. Han Fei thought to himself that it was not a big deal. His soul power was very strong and it was more than enough to deal with ordinary people. The old turtle continued, there's also the soul manipulating technique to read memories. It's easy to be attacked by the soul catcher's memories and affect your own soul's memories. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Affect my memory? Han Fei's face changed a few times. Anything else? The old turtle said leisurely. The soul-manipulating technique can easily cause the target's soul to be confused and become stupid. That's all. Han Fei didn't know what to do with him if the soul manipulator became an idiot. But the second one didn't seem very friendly. But he hadn't gone to the White Shell Royal City yet. The soul-manipulating technique could wait, but he didn't want to be misled by the old turtle. Han Fei said calmly, let's explore this place first. After Han Fei broke through this layer of fog, he finally landed on this large reef. Gotcha! But the moment Han Fei appeared, he grunted and his head seemed to be stabbed heavily. His body was directly frozen into a big ice block. Gotcha! Bam! The ice was shattered, and Han Fei saw that the ice quickly condensed around him. In less than 2 seconds, he was frozen into a block of ice again? Han Fei was speechless. The demonic fire was still burning on his body. But now the ice sculpture was on fire, which was as weird as it could be. The old turtle sneered. The path to the invincible realm. The path to the invincible realm is not only invincible in fighting, but also invincible in defense. With a thought, Han Fei shattered the ice block again, and let the golden giant phantom shroud him. Sure enough, no ice came over this time. He finally blocked the power of the ice. At this moment, Han Fei's eyebrows suddenly twitched. Han Fei immediately thought of something. In such a cold situation, could Little Black and Little White bear it with their current strength? However, since Little Black and Little White had taken the initiative to come out, it seemed that this place was deeply attractive to them. With a flash between Han Fei's eyebrows, Little Black and Little White jumped out. However, as soon as the two little fish circled around Han Fei, Little Black suddenly said, "Dad, I'm cold. I don't want to stay outside." Han Fei was stunned for a moment and quickly threw Little Black into Forge the Universe. Suddenly, Han Fei seemed to understand something. He couldn't help but look at Little White. "Daughter, so you've been thinking of coming out?" Chapter 1258. It was not the first time that the old turtle had seen Little Black and Little White. So, he was not surprised at this moment. However, when Little White jumped out 100 meters with a swish, both Han Fei and the old turtle were stunned, and they said almost at the same time, "Huh! Daughter, aren't you cold?" "Huh! Little White can withstand such a degree of cold power?" Little White said, "Dad, there's a treasure." Han Fei nodded and thought to himself, "I know there's a treasure. If there's no treasure, why should I come down? The question is, can I afford this treasure?" Han Fei immediately said, "Daughter, don't mess around. The treasure is right there. Don't worry. Let's see what the treasure looks like first." Little White had always been good at treasure hunting. With Little White leading the way, Han Fei wouldn't be wrong. However, in this extremely cold place, Han Fei found that his perception couldn't even extend beyond a range of 5 meters. Because as soon as his perception went out, it was frozen and shattered. "I'm asking you, are you angry?" Because he couldn't perceive anything, Han Fei naturally couldn't see any more creatures, so he could only chase Little White all the way. About 10 minutes later, Han Fei only felt that the surroundings were getting colder and colder. Even around the invincible will, frost crystals appeared. Therefore, Han Fei could only compress the invincible will to the surface of his body. This made Han Fei look like a golden man. Han Fei took a slight breath. "Fortunately, I'm a body-refining cultivator. Otherwise, I'm afraid I can't come in." The old turtle was more certain at this moment. "There must be an ice-type treasure here. Your physique is no worse than that of a peak-stage Dao-seeking cultivator, and it has even reached the semi-venerable realm. Plus your invincible will and unlimited spiritual fire, your resistance is already comparable to that of a venerable. Even so, it's still not enough. It can be seen that that thing is not something that can be touched by those below the venerable realm." Han Fei felt that every time he moved forward, the demonic energy burned more fiercely. He probably understood why those venerables just stared at him and were not worried at all that he would cause trouble under the Ice God Gorge. They probably didn't even think that they would be able to reach this place. Han Fei couldn't help but smile and chased Little White for another 10 minutes. Just when he felt like he couldn't hold on any longer, he saw a huge lump of ice glowing with a bluish-silver light. When he saw the lump of ice, Han Fei felt his soul shiver. Han Fei trembled and shouted, "Daughter, is this your opportunity?" In any case, Han Fei didn't think he could enjoy such an opportunity. Although Xiaobai seemed to be fine, Han Fei still felt that he should observe it in case of any accidents. Seeing that Little White was looking at him, Han Fei took out a dragon burial rod unhurriedly. With a wave of his hand, the fishing line shot out in the blink of an eye. However, a horrifying scene took place. The hook and even the fishing line were frozen at a visible speed. That wasn't all. In less than a breath's time, the ice had already extended to the dragon burial rod. At this moment, the medium divine grade sword was frozen solid. With a thought, surging spiritual energy rushed out, trying to shatter the ice in one fell swoop. However, Han Fei felt that the demonic energy was blocked and could no longer be transmitted from the fishing rod. Han Fei's eyes became fierce and he gritted his teeth. Is the ice so solid? As Han Fei transmitted a huge amount of spiritual energy, the demonic energy on the dragon burial rod surged and then trembled violently. Bam! The violent explosion directly shook Han Fei away. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Is the dragon burial rod broken? No matter what, it was still a mid-level divine weapon. However, it was able to bear such a small amount of spiritual qi, yet it was broken? The old turtle said, "It's not that the weapon is bad, but that the power directly froze the structure of the weapon. Therefore, under the conduction of a large amount of spiritual energy, a spiritual energy explosion occurred because of the blockage of spiritual energy. In short, your weapon is ruined." Han Fei thought to himself, "Of course, I can't see it myself. Do you need to tell me?" And in the explosion, Han Fei saw that Little White, at some point, had already come to the side of the big lump of ice. Han Fei's heart slightly tightened, and at the same time, he was surprised. Little White is only level 59. How can she resist such a terrifying freezing power? The old turtle exclaimed in surprise, "I've never seen your spiritual beast before. However, even if it has the coldest body, its level is too low. How can it resist such a strong freezing power?" However, at this moment, not far away, Han Fei suddenly saw the big lump of ice tremble slightly, and there seemed to be a blue gas flowing into Little White's body. Han Fei couldn't help but smile. It shows that my spiritual beast is talented and has infinite potential. Look, it can easily resist the power that I can't resist. Ha ha! The old turtle sneered. Although I don't know your spiritual beast, there is one thing I know. Little Whitefish, I'm sure that you didn't use your own strength to resist the power of ice. It has some kind of Taoist aura. I suspect that it has mastered the way of extreme cold. Han Fei froze for a moment and then smiled. Are you kidding me? How can it have Taoist aura when it hasn't even entered the way? The old turtle pondered for a moment. It's not impossible. This world is far bigger than you think. You think that it's impossible, but some creatures can do it the moment they are born. Some creatures are born with connate Taoist aptitude. If you insist on comparing yourself to different living beings, you'll die of anger. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Connate Taoist aptitude? For some reason, Han Fei suddenly thought of the time dragon carp. It seemed that little time was only level 1, right? But at that time, wasn't it already able to affect space and time? Little Black and Little White were both mysterious creatures. Why couldn't they have connate Taoist aptitudes? After all, if he used the supreme yin-yang wheel, there seemed to be a Taoist aura. Thinking of this, Han Fei felt that Little Black and Little White were even more extraordinary. He said, "Girl, come on, eat up this lump of ice for me." Little White didn't respond, but Han Fei's face suddenly changed slightly as if danger was coming. Without the old turtle's reminder, Han Fei discovered that at the bottom of the water, a tricolored light suddenly appeared. Because it was no longer in the mist, Han Fei could see it very clearly. It turned out to be 3 identical prawns of different colors, each of which was about 7 or 8 meters long. The old turtle said, "It's a tri-light blazing prawn. No wonder there are no other creatures around. It turns out that this thing is here." Han Fei, boy, don't let your guard down with the art of invincibility. Go down and kill them. Remember, find a way to kill them at the same time. Because the distance was not very close, Han Fei hadn't been able to read the information of the tri-light blazing prawns, so he could only listen to the old turtle. However, these 3 big prawns were obviously targeting Little White. How could Han Fei tolerate this? My daughter is eating. How dare you destroy her? Han Fei took a step forward, pointed his finger, and the infinity water erupted first, rolling like a long dragon. After taking this step, Han Fei didn't feel colder but warmer. The 3 big prawns seemed to be slightly surprised by Han Fei's sudden arrival. At this moment, 3 rays of light shot straight at Han Fei. They were milky white, dark blue, and fiery red. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name: Tri-Light Blazing Prawn. Introduction: a legendary creature with 3 prawns in one body. One has the Tri-Light Divine Water, one can dive into the Sea of Fire, and one can dive into the extreme cold. The 3 lights are red, blue, and white. The white light can break armor, the red light can kill enemies, and the blue light can invade souls. When the 3 of them work together, it's even more powerful. Level 76, Law Enforcement, Tri-Light Divine Body Quality, Legendary Spiritual Energy greater than 133,664 points. Effect: when practicing the ice and fire breathing technique, the effect is doubled, and the user can resist ice and fire. Collectible Cold Crystal, Fire Seed, Dow Thorn, Tri-Light Extraordinary Meridian. Absorbable. Note: unless the 3 prawns are killed at the same time, if one is not killed, the other 2 can be regenerated. When he saw this information, Han Fei was shocked. 3 big prawns at the mid-level of the Tao-seeking state? It was the first time that he had seen such a weird creature. Since the 3 prawns were in one body, he couldn't treat them as 3 mid-level Tao-seeking state monsters, but at least as high-level Tao-seeking state monsters. However, according to their legendary quality, Han Fei frowned. Their real combat power is at least at the peak level of the Tao-seeking state. The old turtle said, "Don't be careless. These Tri-Light cold prawns are one body, and you can't underestimate their strength." At this moment, there was no time to talk to the old turtle. Han Fei had already rushed out, and the million-knife art directly twisted the prawns that were emitting ice-blue color. Crack, crack, crack. The prawns were shattered. Han Fei was stunned. How could they be killed so easily? This was obviously impossible. If they were killed with one slash, would these Tri-Light cold prawns still be legendary creatures? Sure enough, the blue prawns that were broken into pieces of ice turned into blue light cones, stabbing at Han Fei. Han Fei's reaction was extremely fast. He stomped his foot, and the soul-driving array immediately appeared. He clearly knew that these blue prawns could invade his soul, so he wouldn't have a chance to attack them. BM, BM, BM. The soul-driving array rippled and was about to break. Han Fei stomped his foot and another one appeared. At the same time, Han Fei tried to release the void lines. However, as soon as the void lines were released, Han Fei felt that his soul trembled and his whole body stiffened. He happened to be hit head-on by the red and white rays of light. Puff! Clang! Han Fei's invincible will was pierced through with one blow. Immediately afterward, the red light pierced Han Fei's body like an arrow or a spear. With a harsh clang, Han Fei was blasted back a kilometer. Han Fei was blasted back a kilometer and didn't regain consciousness until halfway. Because of the Tri-Light cold prawns, the surrounding temperature seemed to have risen. However, that was just an illusion. In the extreme cold, even if the temperature rose a little, so what? Han Fei couldn't help but take a deep breath and look down at his chest. There was a small hole there, but it just so happened to be on his own bone, so it made a ding sound. Han Fei's face suddenly changed. What precise cooperation! No wonder they are legendary creatures. Chapter 1259. For a long time, Han Fei had encountered a lot of weird creatures on his expeditions. Taking into account the time he spent in the reincarnation world, Han Fei was quite experienced and knowledgeable. Therefore, Han Fei didn't take it seriously. At the moment when Han Fei retreated, the blue prawn had rushed at Little White. The red and white prawns tried to stop him. 2 rays of light, the white one was armor-breaking, and the red one was enemy-slaying. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't continue to fight. Before he stopped retreating, he had already blocked the way of the blue lobster. Moo, the 100 Beasts' soul-suppressing roar was activated. This time, it was not a simulated dragon roar, but the old buffalo's voice. Han Fei grinned coldly. Who do you think you are to play soul attack with me? While Han Fei stopped the blue prawn with a thought, Yuwendao's puppet body appeared in the cold. Han Fei just wanted to see if Yuwendao could resist the cold power. If he couldn't, he had to take it back. However, to Han Fei's surprise, Yuwendao's body was burning with raging flames. In addition to the flames, Han Fei could also see that Yuwendao's body was shaking, but he didn't know what it was for. Although Yuwendao had been refined into a puppet, he could only sense Yuwendao and give him some orders. Han Fei couldn't turn himself into Yuwendao to fight. After all, this was not possession. A puppet could also use its power instinctively. Therefore, Han Fei actually didn't know how Yuwendao fought. Han Fei punched the blue prawn again, only to see ripples in the seawater. It seemed that every drop of seawater was shaking. Yuwendao intended to attack the prawn by shaking it. However, Han Fei saw that the flames on Yuwendao's body were getting smaller and smaller, and his movements were getting slower and slower. The old turtle said, "After all, he's a puppet and can only fight by instinct. Besides, Yuwendao's aptitude and spiritual heritage are not enough for him to fight for long in this environment. It's already good enough that he can help you block the attack of the 2 prawns." Han Fei's face was a little pale, but he still took back Yuwendao. He couldn't help but feel speechless. This environment was too unfavorable for him. The void lines couldn't resist the freezing power, and neither could the puppet. He only had the infinity water. Wait, something's not right. Han Fei suddenly thought of something. The fire core and water luster were both legendary creatures. They seemed to be able to resist the power of extreme coldness, right? Whoosh! The next moment, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared, along with the water and the fire seed. The moment it appeared, the flames on the tinder's body suddenly shrinking by nearly half. Hiss! The kindling's voice trembled. "Master, where are you? I'm a little cold." Han Fei sweated. "I'm in the middle of a fight. Do you think I can take it?" Water Luster said, "What a terrifying freezing power. Master, we've just become explorers. Although we can hold on for a while, we can only use 80% of our strength." Kindling added, "I'll take 60%, no. I'll take 50%. Han Fei was speechless. Then what's the point of fighting him? He's also a legend. The Kindling and Water Luster naturally noticed the 3 light-blazing shrimp, but there was a huge gap between them. This time, Water Luster and the Kindling said at the same time, "We can't beat him." Water Luster said, "I can probably stop one if I join hands with the Kindling." Han Fei said, "Let's try." Shwa! Shwa! After that, Han Fei disappeared. He had already picked up Snowmorn and flashed crazily. It was impossible to see him with the naked eye. In the void, a sword flashed, and a wave of sword energy appeared in the water. The place where the sword energy passed was so sharp that the water was cut so fast that it formed a wall of water. Gotcha! The blue and red prawns were cut off, but on the other side, a white light flashed, and the red and blue lights condensed into 2 prawns again. Han Fei's lips twitched. Their resurrection speed is really fast. The old turtle said, "It's not that they're fast, but that they're not dead at all. Only when the 3 prawns die at the same time will they merge into one. Only when they fuse will you be able to truly kill them." Poochie! Boom! The white head pierced through the water luster and collided with the water, causing an intense explosion and surging waves. The three light-blazing shrimp didn't seem special when they fought each other, because they thought that Han Fei was too strong and ignored the fact that the shrimp was actually very strong. Although they were both legendary, the kindling and water luster couldn't gain any advantage. Moreover, the two of them had just become explorers, while the other party was almost 2 realms higher than them. This was a complete suppression. The illusion of mountains and rivers appeared, and Han Fei recalled them before water luster and the kindling had a chance to respond. If they couldn't beat the shrimp, they couldn't be abused by a shrimp. Han Fei could throw one of the 3 shrimps into the sea-quelling painting, because the 5 legendary creatures could definitely resist it. However, if they really fought, the sea-quelling painting would probably be a mess. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the mountains would collapse and the earth would crack. So this idea popped up in Han Fei's mind for a while, but it was immediately denied. Han Fei glanced at the prawn that turned blue again, and then at the red and white prawns that were rushing at him. At that moment, waves surged around Han Fei, and the infinity water was all drawn back into the normal seawater. Han Fei was expressionless. Sure enough, he had to be strong himself. I don't believe that I can't defeat you with 3 shrimps today. How am I supposed to survive in this world? Looking back, Little White was still absorbing some kind of power from the big ice lump. Han Fei's figure disappeared again, and the golden fist mark rumbled and smashed at the white prawn. Spiritual piercing blasted at the blue prawn, and the drawing technique slashed at the red one. The blue prawn and the white prawn were smashed into pieces, but the white prawn broke his golden fist mark with its head. Han Fei seemed to have expected it. After several battles, he found a problem. If these 3 shrimps didn't collapse at the same time, it seemed that the last one would be invincible. As a matter of fact, when the red and blue prawns were crushed into pieces, a wave rolled up. The sacrificing fist mark broke out, pierced the bottom of the sea, and directly smashed the white prawn. Han Fei grinned. Done. Han Fei said, "Legendary creatures only have the characteristics of legendary creatures. If you can't target this characteristic, it will be very difficult to defeat them. If this characteristic is broken, just like now, explode." Han Fei opened his mouth gently, and the 3-color prawns suddenly exploded. A terrifying explosion sounded at the same time. After all, the infinity water was also a single weapon. If he wanted to self-destruct, it would be like an approved alarm clock. Not even the slightest bit would be off. Bam! 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 Han Fei pulled out a fish skin map, and a set of Great Plate Turtle Array protected Little White in it, while he was blown dozens of kilometers away. Above the Ice God Gorge, the mountain trembled slightly for a while as if an earthquake had occurred. The 3 venerables scanned with their perception, but no one went down to check. But the turtle venerable said, "I'm afraid that they met their opponents down there." That makes sense. Some creatures down there are indeed special. The seahorse venerable said, "This fish dragon king is not bad. He really passed through." The half-mermaid venerable said, "Of course he passed through. Look at the level of his demonic heritage. If he can really advance to a level 8 high-quality spiritual heritage, this means that as long as he doesn't die, he will definitely be much stronger than us in the end." The turtle venerable said leisurely, "Let's see how long he can last down there." Below the Ice God Gorge, the moment the tri-light blazing cold prawns shattered, they actually fused together. Yes, they didn't die but just fused. The fused prawns were more than 10 meters long, and the 3 spikes on their heads were red, white, and blue. At this moment, Han Fei roared, activated the Devil Change, and activated the Beast King art. Snowmorn burst out. Swish! Han Fei pushed out a terrifying sword attack with one hand, and the sword chi, like a milky white brilliance, pierced through the heads of the 3 prawns and came out from their tails. The red spike in the middle of the giant prawns had been shattered by Snowmorn. It couldn't have survived. As he expected, Han Fei sensed the attack and snorted. Advanced Tao-seeking state. I thought I would reach the peak. After the 3 prawns were beaten back to their original forms, they turned back into 3 bodies. However, they didn't move at all this time. Except for the broken shell of the red one, the other 2 were intact. They had died at the same time. Huh? They died just like that? The old turtle said, of course. Do you think legendary creatures are invincible? Everything is relative. You're just a kid with many tricks. Think about it. If it were someone else, they would have been killed more than 10 times. However, Han Fei didn't care about the old turtle's words. His eyes glowing, he cut the red prawn's shell with Snowmorn and said, a legendary shrimp vein? Han Fei couldn't help but pull it and his eyes glittered. Good stuff. The void lines can be upgraded now. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1260. The 3 light blazing cold lobster didn't give Han Fei a chance to collect it at all. Its body was switching between the glow and reality. It was because of this strange ability that even a semi-venerable couldn't kill them if he didn't grasp the key point. But there were many treasures on the 3 light blazing cold lobster. Han Fei picked up 2 lobster spears, a cold crystal, and a ball of fire essence. The rest were the 3 meridians, and he put them into Forge the Universe. However, as soon as the fire essence was put into Forge the Universe, Little Black swallowed it in one gulp. Seeing this scene, Han Fei couldn't help but be vigilant. Little Black and Little White were originally inseparable, they were twins of yin and yang. Now, Little White encountered its own great opportunity, but Little Black didn't seem to like this opportunity. On the contrary, Little Black had a need for blazing flames. Gotcha! Before Han Fei could think too much, suddenly, he heard a crisp crack, which turned out to be from the big ice lump that Little White swallowed. At this moment, Han Fei clearly saw a crack appear, and then the blue aura became denser and denser. However, soon, cracks appeared on the big ice lump one after another. Crack, crack, crack bm. Suddenly, the ice lump broke. Han Fei immediately took a breath. F***ck, this is not a rare treasure? The old turtle said, nonsense, of course not. The real treasure is just wrapped in this lump of ice. When the ice lump broke, Han Fei only felt that the surrounding temperature dropped again. In an instant, Han Fei retreated a kilometer. He almost couldn't resist the invincible will anymore. His whole body was burning flexibly. Han Fei began to refine himself as a divine weapon. Almost every second 10,000 points of spiritual energy were burned up. Fortunately, he had enough spiritual energy reserve. Otherwise, a normal Tao-seeking state demon wouldn't be able to absorb enough energy from the void to meet this intensity of spiritual energy consumption. When the big ice lump was completely broken, Han Fei saw a sky-blue object that looked like an ice crystal flower. That thing was like a firecracker held in his hand, and its surface was flashing irregularly. Its shape was more exaggerated than that of the infinity water. After the infinity water was picked, it turned into a drop of water, and no one could recognize it in the water. As for the blue object, it didn't look like water, nor did it look like ice. Just by looking at it, one could tell that it was extraordinary. As a matter of fact, that thing actually produced a connection mist with Little White. It seemed to be injecting its main body into Whitey's body. Although Han Fei really wanted to see if the demon purification pot could read it, he didn't dare to do so. But the old turtle suddenly said, I understand. Han Fei was confused. What did you understand? The old turtle said, this can be considered a natural treasure, but it's not the best. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the blue sea ice sand, a natural treasure that has been nurtured in extremely cold places for a long time. The reason why I couldn't sense it before was because the damage to my soul was too severe. At most, this is equivalent to that drop of water. Infinity water? Han Fei exclaimed. Are you kidding me? This thing is already comparable to the infinity water. How can it not be the best? Although the infinity water doesn't seem to have any particularly powerful effects and power, it's very useful. It could grow as he grew. Even if I have a drop of infinity water, it may be enough for me until I become a king, because the infinity water is suitable for every realm. Li Huang of the Heavenly Desolation City also became a city treasure. Han Fei felt that there would definitely be more uses for it in the future. But there was something comparable to the infinity water under the Ice God Gorge, which was too exaggerated. The old turtle said, "I've seen it before. This thing may not be as good as your drop of water, but it was born naturally and coincides with the great way of heaven and earth. Therefore, it is very attractive to creatures of the same kind. This also shows that your little white fish has a great way of heaven and earth. In this case, your spiritual beast should be born with a great way of heaven and earth, which is extremely rare in this barren land." Han Fei was suspicious. "Are you saying that their great ways coincide?" The old turtle nodded. "Of course. When you took that drop of water, you chose it with the water, not the water, right?" Han Fei's body trembled. "How do you know?" The old turtle sneered. "I have seen more natural spiritual treasures than you have eaten. How can I not know? Unless one could forcefully suppress a heaven and earth spiritual treasure, it was usually the treasure that chose its people. It was not something that one could use just because one liked it. Otherwise, this grain of ice wouldn't still be under the Ice God Gorge." Han Fei took a breath. "So, it likes my little white?" The old turtle smiled. "It's a reaction. I told you that after you enter the Tao, different opportunities will produce a reaction. Your little white fish is born with a great way of heaven, and so is this grain of ice. This is a reaction." Han Fei couldn't help asking, "What about Little Black?" The old turtle said, "It's simple. Yin and Yang complement each other. The little white fish swallowed a natural spiritual treasure. Find a fire attribute natural spiritual treasure for the little black fish to swallow. Isn't there also a fire seed in your painting? It has already developed intelligence. Although it may be a little worse than this grain of ice, it can barely complement this grain of black yarn." Han Fei's face turned green. "What the hell? Killing my own people? Is this Han Fei's style? He's calling me master, so I can't just do that, can I? Besides, didn't the fire seed come out just now? It almost froze and died. How can the fire seed compare with this guy? Maybe even the fire seed itself doesn't believe it." Han Fei shrugged. "That's impossible. The fire seed is mine." The old turtle was speechless. "Do you have a bottom line?" Han Fei said with a black face, "Old Yuan, don't put your ideas on me. I have a bottom line. Next time you talk to me like this, we're not friends anymore." The old turtle sneered in his heart. "What the hell? Do you have a bottom line?" Even the turtle laughed. The old turtle said leisurely, "If you can't, you can go to your junior sister. Isn't there a fire tree in the Sea of Flames? Something that can burn such a large area of the sea for thousands of years must be extraordinary." Han Fei frowned. "That's true. I said that thing looks like a parasol tree." However, Han Fei thought of something else. In fact, in addition to the fire tree, if the Blood Sea Divine Wood City was full of big red trunks, there should be no shortage of fire attribute treasures, right? Thinking of this, Han Fei decided not to be so anxious. If there were treasures, he could eat them and find a way to solve the problem of malnutrition later. Suddenly, Han Fei's pupils constricted. He saw that Little White actually opened its mouth and swallowed the whole ice sand. After the blue sea ice sand was swallowed by Little White, the spiritual fire on Han Fei's body jumped 10 meters away. The terrifying freezing power disappeared. Although it was still very cold here, it was completely incomparable to just now. Han Fei's perception even extended more than a kilometer. Besides, the temperature here was soaring rapidly. He believed that after a while, his perception range would continue to increase. Then, in Han Fei's mind, Little Black's voice sounded, "Dad, let me out. I'm going to make a breakthrough." Han Fei shivered. Is he going to make a breakthrough? Han Fei didn't dare to take it lightly. With a thought, Little Black jumped out. Swish! Little Black swam to Little White's side, and then the two circled each other. The two fishes were even more crystal clear. The milky white brilliance on Little White's body was comparable to the brilliance of the apocalyptic divine technique. And Little Black was even darker. Han Fei couldn't even see the details of Little Black's body with his eyesight. F***ck. It's all absorbed? Han Fei was shocked. There was a kind of darkness that could even absorb light. It was so dark that it could turn into a shadow. The reason why Little Black could still be seen was because of the environment. Compared with the pitch-black water, Little Black's darkness was purer. It was so pure that no matter how hard Han Fei looked, he could only see a mass of darkness, and he had to use his perception to distinguish it. Feeling that the surrounding spiritual energy was drilling into Little Black and Little White's bodies, Han Fei took out a huge amount of spiritual spring and threw it over. These were his unique spiritual beasts. No matter how much he ate, he had to raise them. Little Black and Little White simply drilled into the spiritual spring, and the spiritual spring disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Han Fei couldn't help but be a little surprised. Are the standards for breakthroughs so high now? He had thrown out at least 10,000 caddies of spiritual spring, which was equivalent to 10 million points of spiritual energy. It had only been a few minutes and they were almost done? The old turtle said, "When you become a cultivator, you will understand that spiritual energy is actually not the key. The reason why you are still using spiritual energy is that you haven't comprehended the dismantling of spiritual energy enough." Han Fei narrowed his eyes when he heard the dismantling of spiritual energy. Shu Shushan seemed to have told him that when he became an explorer, he could actually start the next step of dismantling spiritual energy. When this was over, he would like to see why spiritual energy was not spiritual energy anymore. He threw out another 10,000 caddies of spiritual spring. Suddenly, Han Fei scanned his perception range and found that it had already covered a range of 10,000 meters. He saw that there seemed to be creatures moving in the ice at the bottom of the sea. Han Fei was shocked. There seemed to be a lot of creatures down there. The old turtle said, "Of course, when the freezing power is gone, there will naturally be creatures starting to recover, but not many. Even if the blue sea smoothie is gone, this is still a place that can breed smoothies. The ice that has been frozen for tens of millions of years can't be broken easily. It will be difficult for them to come out without decades or even 100 years." As soon as the old turtle said that, a big octopus appeared. It was all white and looked sick. Han Fei said leisurely, "Didn't you say it would take hundreds of years?" The old turtle pondered. Maybe some of them were not frozen at all. The second chapter. Asking for votes, end of this chapter.